They said a commoner couldn't survive high society. They were wrong. When Alara Whitlock walked into the Vale estate that morning, she was invisible, just another tradesperson delivering flowers. 3 months later, she'd stand at the center of a ballroom scandal that would shake the aristocracy to its core. But before the champagne and the whispers, before the Duke who hated her learned to love her, there was only this: a dying father, empty pockets, and one impossible offer from a woman who dealt in secrets like currency. This is the story of how a florist became a duchess and changed everything. Stay until the end to see how she turned their cruelty into her crown. And if you're watching from London, Paris, New York, or anywhere else, drop your city in the comments and hit that like button. Let's begin. The fog rolled in thick that morning, the kind that turned the world gray and uncertain. Alara Whitlock pulled her shawl tighter as she guided the delivery cart through the iron gates of the Vale estate, her breath forming small clouds in the October chill. The wheels creaked. One of them had been wobbling for weeks now, but there was no money to fix it. There was never money for anything anymore. She'd made this delivery run 100 times, maybe more. The path to the servants' entrance was worn into her memory, past the fountain with the stone angels, left at the rose garden her mother used to tend before the fever took her, straight back to the kitchen door, where Mrs. Copeland would inspect the arrangements with her perpetual frown and inevitably find something to complain about. "You're late," would come the greeting. Never mind that Alara had been up since 4 preparing the bouquets. Never mind that her father's medicine had cost twice what she'd budgeted, and she'd had to choose between quality ribbon and quality food. The estate loomed ahead, all gray stone and sharp angles, windows like cold eyes watching her approach. Alara had never been inside the main house. People like her didn't go through the front door. People like her weren't supposed to exist to the people who lived in places like this, except as functions. The girl who brings the flowers. The boy who polishes the silver. Interchangeable. Forgettable. She was fine with that. Invisibility had its advantages. The cart hit a rut and several stems shifted. Alara stopped, her hands moving quickly to steady the arrangements. White lilies for the dowager's sitting room. She insisted on fresh ones every 3 days. Roses for the morning room, though Alara had never understood why they needed flowers in a room no one seemed to use. And a special arrangement of autumn blooms she'd put together on spec, hoping Mrs. Copeland might be in a generous mood and buy it for the entrance hall. Hoping, always hoping. Her younger sister Mira's words from that morning echoed in her head. "Did you ask about advance payment?" Alara hadn't. She never did. The Vales paid on account, which meant 30 days minimum, sometimes 60 if they felt like it. You didn't push people like that. You smiled, you delivered, you waited. That was how this worked, except it wasn't working anymore. Her father's illness had seen to that. The medicines kept him breathing but bled them dry. The shop, her mother's shop, now hers, was holding on by a thread. Mira was 16 and should have been thinking about suitors and dresses, not taking in mending work by candlelight. Thomas, at 13, had quit school to work at the docks. 3 months. The physician had said her father might have 3 months if they could afford the treatments. Maybe 6 if he rested. Maybe. Maybe wasn't good enough. Alara reached the kitchen door and knocked. 3 sharp raps. Not too loud. You didn't want to seem demanding. Mrs. Copeland opened it, her expression already set to disapproval. "You're... Oh." The housekeeper's face shifted, surprise flickering across it. "Miss Whitlock, you'll want to... That is, her ladyship has requested to see you." Alara's stomach dropped. "I'm sorry." "The Dowager Duchess, she wants to speak with you, directly." Mrs. Copeland's tone made it clear this was as bizarre to her as it was to Alara. "Leave the cart. Come with me." There must be some mistake. I just deliver the... Now, Miss Whitlock." The command in that voice left no room for argument. Alara's mind raced. Had she done something wrong? Were the flowers not up to standard? Had someone complained? But Mrs. Copeland's expression wasn't angry exactly. It was something else. Almost nervous. They didn't go to the servants' hall. They went up. Through corridors Alara had only glimpsed through windows, past paintings worth more than her entire street, across carpets so thick her worn boots sank into them. She felt acutely aware of her rough wool dress, the dirt under her fingernails from handling stems, the smell of earth and green things that clung to her. This was a mistake. This had to be a mistake. Mrs. Copeland stopped in front of a door carved with what looked like a family crest. She knocked, waited, then opened it. "Miss Whitlock, your ladyship." The room beyond was all dark wood and darker fabrics. A fire burned in a hearth large enough to roast a pig. And seated in a high-backed chair that looked more like a throne was a woman who could have been carved from the same stone as the estate itself. Dowager Duchess Helena Vale. Alara had seen her exactly twice in her life, both times from a distance. She looked older up close, must have been 70 at least. But there was nothing frail about her. Her spine was iron, her eyes were sharper. "Leave us," the dowager said, not looking at Mrs. Copeland. The door clicked shut. Alara stood there, hands clasped, trying not to fidget. The silence stretched. She counted her own heartbeats. "You're younger than I expected," the dowager said finally. "How old are you, girl?" 22, ma'am. Your ladyship, 22. The dowager's fingers drummed on the arm of her chair. "And you run your mother's flower shop alone?" "Yes, your ladyship. Your father is ill. Lung fever, I'm told. Your sister does mending work. Your brother quit school." The dowager recited these facts like she was reading from a ledger. "You owe the apothecary £42. The landlord is 3 months patient, but won't be 4. You sold your mother's pearls last week. They were worth more than the £10 you got, but you needed quick money." Alara's face went cold. "How do you—" "I make it my business to know things." The dowager leaned forward slightly. "Sit down, Miss Whitlock. You're making me nervous hovering there like a ghost." There was a chair, smaller, less grand, positioned across from the dowager. Alara sat. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking, so she gripped them together in her lap. "I have a proposition for you," the dowager said. "You will hear it fully before you speak. Understood?" Alara nodded. Her throat had gone dry. "My son, the Duke of Vale, requires a fiancée." The dowager paused. "Temporarily." Of all the things Alara had expected, this wasn't among them. She opened her mouth, closed it. The dowager raised one eyebrow. "I said you would hear me out. My son is 30 years old. He has refused every suitable match I've arranged for the past decade. He buries himself in those books and ledgers of his, managing estates, avoiding society. It's unseemly. More than that, it's strategically foolish. There are interests who would benefit from seeing our family weakened. Unmarried, Cassian is vulnerable to manipulation, to rumors, to worse." The dowager's fingers drummed again. A tell, Alara realized. The woman was not as calm as she appeared. "The solution is simple. He needs to appear engaged, settled, spoken for. It will quiet the vultures and buy time for more permanent arrangements." The dowager's gaze fixed on Alara like a hawk spotting prey. "You will pose as his fiancée for 3 months. You will attend necessary functions. You will be seen. You will be convincing. In return, your debts will be cleared. Your father will receive the best physicians money can procure. Your siblings will want for nothing. And at the end of 3 months, the engagement will end. Mutual decision, very amicable, and you will receive £500 to do with as you wish." £500? Alara's entire body went numb. That was impossible money. That was change-your-life money. "Why me?" Her voice came out hoarse. "Because you're nobody." The dowager said it without malice, just fact. No family connections to exploit the situation. No social ambitions to complicate the arrangement. You're pretty enough to be believable, clever enough to be taught, and desperate enough to say yes. You need what I'm offering. I need someone I can control. Control? The word sat heavy in the air. "And the Duke?" Alara asked. "Does he know about this?" "He will be informed." "That's not what I asked." The dowager's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "No, he does not know. Yet. Cassian has made it abundantly clear he won't cooperate with conventional matchmaking, so I'm removing his choice in the matter. You're forcing him into a fake engagement with a stranger. I'm protecting him from himself." The dowager's voice went sharp. And from people who would see him ruined. You don't understand the world we move in, girl. Weakness is blood in the water. My son is brilliant with numbers, useless with people. He thinks he can hide in his study while the sharks circle. He's wrong. Alara's mind was racing. This was insane. This was absolutely insane. Pretend to be engaged to a duke? Her? She couldn't even afford new boots. They'll know, she said. Society will take one look at me and know I don't belong. You'll be trained. You have 3 weeks before the first public appearance. My staff will teach you everything you need to know. How to dress, how to speak, how to hold a teacup without looking like you're strangling it. The dowager's eyes narrowed. You're not stupid, Miss Whitlock. I've been watching you for weeks. You adapt. You survive. That's what I need. Watching me? I told you, I make it my business to know things. The dowager stood, and Alara automatically stood too. You have until tomorrow morning to decide. If you agree, you'll move into the estate immediately. Your family will be taken care of starting today. A good faith payment. If you refuse, you walk out that door and we never speak again. But understand this. I don't make offers like this twice. And I don't think you have better options. She didn't. That was the worst part. Alara could feel the weight of it. Her father's labored breathing, Mira's tired eyes, Thomas's too thin shoulders, the landlord's final notice, the apothecary's dwindling patience. One more thing, the dowager added. If you accept, you will commit fully. No half measures. No quitting when it gets difficult. And it will get difficult. Society can be unkind to outsiders. You will be scrutinized, criticized, likely humiliated. You will endure it. Because the moment you break, the moment you run, the deal is void. Clear? Crystal. The dowager studied her for a long moment. Good. Mrs. Copeland will see you out. I expect your answer by 9 tomorrow morning. Alara was halfway to the door when she stopped, turned back. Why 3 months? Why not just find him a real match? 3 months is long enough to change perceptions, short enough to end cleanly. The dowager sat again, suddenly looking every one of her 70 years. And because, Miss Whitlock, sometimes the lie is more useful than the truth. The cart ride home was a blur. Alara's hands moved automatically, guiding the horse through familiar streets while her mind churned. 500 pounds, her father saved. Mira and Thomas safe. All she had to do was lie to an entire social class, pretend to love a man who didn't know she existed, and somehow survive 3 months of scrutiny from people who considered her less than the dirt on their boots. Simple. The shop was dark when she arrived. She'd been gone longer than expected. Inside, she found Mira asleep over her mending, needle still threaded. Thomas was curled up in the chair by their father's bed, where the old man's breathing rattled like stones in a tin. Alara stood there in the doorway, still wearing her shawl, and felt the weight of the decision pressing down. Pride said no. Common sense said no. Every instinct for self-preservation said no. But love, the fierce, desperate kind that makes you do impossible things, love said yes. She made tea. She woke Mira gently and sent her to bed proper. She checked on her father, smoothing his hair back like he used to do for her when she was small. Thomas stirred, and she covered him with a blanket. Then she sat at the small desk where her mother used to do the shop accounts and wrote a single word on a piece of paper. Yes. The dowager's carriage arrived at 8 the next morning. Alara was ready, one bag packed with everything she owned that was worth keeping. Not much. It fit in one bag. Mira cried. Thomas tried not to and failed. Their father was too fevered to understand much, but he gripped her hand when she leaned down to kiss his forehead. Be safe, he whispered. Your mother would be proud. Alara wasn't sure about that. Her mother had valued honesty above most things. This plan was built on lies, but her mother had also valued family, and sometimes you lied to protect the people you loved. The estate looked different in morning light, less forbidding, maybe, or perhaps she was just too numb to feel properly terrified. Mrs. Copeland met her at the servants' entrance this time. You'll have rooms in the east wing, the housekeeper said, her tone carefully neutral. Not the family wing, mind you, but appropriate for, well, for your new position. New position. What a way to describe it. The room she was shown to was larger than the entire ground floor of her family's home. It had a bed you could get lost in, a writing desk by the window, a wardrobe that echoed when she opened it. "Someone will be by shortly to take your measurements," Mrs. Copeland said. "Her ladyship has arranged for a tutor as well. Madame Bisset. She'll be handling your education." "When do I meet him?" Alara asked. "The Duke." Mrs. Copeland's expression flickered. "Her ladyship thought it best to wait until you're prepared." Prepared. Like she was a meal being cooked. Alara wanted to laugh or scream. She wasn't sure which. "Right," she said instead. "Thank you, Mrs. Copeland." The housekeeper left. Alara stood in the center of that enormous room, still holding her single bag, and thought, "What have I done?" The answer came 3 hours later in the form of Madame Bisset, a thin, severe woman with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. She circled Alara like a general inspecting troops and finding them wanting. "Mon Dieu," she muttered, "we have much work to do." "I know how to—" Alara started. "You know nothing." Madame Bisset's accent was thick, French, unimpressed. "You know how to walk in a world that doesn't look at you. Now you must learn to walk in one that will watch every step. Posture." Alara straightened. "No, from here." Madame Bisset pressed her hand to Alara's lower back. "The spine is a line, not a curve. Again." They spent an hour on posture alone, then another on how to sit. Apparently there were 17 wrong ways to sit in a chair and one right way, and Alara managed to find all 17. By the time a maid brought lunch, Alara's back ached, and her pride was in tatters. "Better," Madame Bisset said, which felt like high praise. "Tomorrow we begin speech. Your accent is acceptable, but there are phrases you must unlearn, words that mark you as common." "I am common," Alara said. "Not anymore." Madame Bisset's smile was sharp. "Now you are a lie, and lies, ma chérie, must be perfect to be believed." The seamstress arrived that afternoon. 3 assistants in tow, arms full of fabrics Alara had only ever seen in shop windows. They measured everything: arms, legs, waist, neck, inseam. It was mortifying. One of them tisked at her hands. "The calluses," she murmured, "will need gloves until they fade." They wouldn't fade. Not completely. Those calluses came from years of working with thorns and stems, from carrying buckets and tying ribbons. They were part of her, but apparently they had to be hidden, just like everything else real about her. Dinner was brought to her room on a silver tray. The food was rich enough to make her stomach hurt. She wasn't used to eating like this. She picked at it, managed half, and spent the rest of the evening staring out the window at the grounds below. Somewhere in this massive house was the Duke. Cassian Vale. The man she was supposed to convince the world she loved. She'd seen his portrait in the hall, dark hair, serious expression, eyes that looked like they were calculating something even in paint. Handsome, she supposed, in that aristocratic way. Sharp cheekbones and a jawline that could cut glass. Handsome meant nothing if he was cruel, or stupid, or— A knock interrupted her spiraling thoughts. Mrs. Copeland again, looking uncomfortable. "His Grace would like to see you," she said, "in his study. Now." Alara's heart kicked into a gallop. "I thought the Dowager said we'd wait until I was ready." "His Grace disagrees with her ladyship on that point." Mrs. Copeland's expression said this was not uncommon. "This way, please." The study was in the west wing, down a corridor lined with portraits of stern-looking people who all shared the same aristocratic nose. Mrs. Copeland knocked, opened the door without waiting for an answer, and gestured Alara inside. The room was chaos disguised as order. Books everywhere, stacked on shelves, piled on chairs, spread across the massive desk that dominated the space. Papers covered in numbers and notes. A globe in one corner, a chess set mid-game on a side table. And behind the desk, standing with his arms crossed, was Cassian Vale. The portrait hadn't lied. He was tall, had to duck slightly when he moved to avoid a hanging lamp. Dark hair, darker eyes currently fixed on her with an expression somewhere between fury and disbelief. He wore no jacket, his shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows like he'd been working and couldn't be bothered with propriety. He looked at her the way you might look at a problem you didn't know how to solve. So, he said. His voice was lower than she'd expected, rough with barely controlled anger. You're the one my mother purchased. Alara felt her own temper spike. I wasn't purchased. I was offered a deal. Same thing. Not even close to the same thing. His eyebrows rose slightly. Apparently he'd expected her to be meek, to apologize, to bow and scrape. Alara had spent 22 years bowing to people who thought they were better than her. She was done. Look, she said, moving further into the room. I didn't ask for this. Your mother came to me. She made an offer. I said yes because I am desperate, and she knew it. If you have a problem with this arrangement, take it up with her, not me. Oh, I have, Cassian said. Extensively. She informed me the contracts are already drawn up. My signature or refusal changes nothing. She'll proceed either way and tie up the estate in legal complications that will take years to unravel. He moved around the desk, closer. My mother is many things, Miss Whitlock. Subtle is not one of them. When she wants something, she gets it. Apparently, she wants you parading around as my fiancé. For 3 months, Alara said. Then you're free. We both are. Free. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. You think this ends in 3 months? Society doesn't forget, especially when there's scandal involved. Breaking an engagement, even a fake one, leaves marks. Questions, rumors, those follow you. Then maybe you should have chosen your own match before your mother had to step in. The words were out before Alara could stop them. Too bold. Too much. Cassian's expression went cold. You know nothing about my situation. You know nothing about mine. Alara lifted her chin. But here we are, both trapped in your mother's scheme. So we can either fight each other for the next 3 months and make this hell for everyone, or we can make the best of it. Your choice. Silence. Cassian stared at her like she was a puzzle written in a language he didn't speak. Then, unexpectedly, his mouth twitched. You don't talk like a florist, he said. You don't act like a duke. Another almost smile. Fair point. He moved back to his desk, ran a hand through his hair. This is insane. You understand that, right? We'll be torn apart out there. Society doesn't embrace outsiders. They destroy them for sport. I know, Alara said quietly. Your mother was very clear about that. And you still said yes. I had my reasons. Cassian studied her for a long moment. Whatever he saw seemed to satisfy something, because he nodded. All right, here's how this works. In public, we're engaged. Disgustingly happy about it, I suppose. In private, we stay out of each other's way. You do whatever training my mother has planned. I'll manage the estate and try to minimize the damage this causes. 3 months. Then we part ways, blame incompatibility, and hopefully both survive with our dignity intact. Agreed, Alara said. One more thing. Cassian's voice dropped. Don't mistake this for anything real. I don't need saving, Miss Whitlock, and I don't do romance. This is a business arrangement, nothing more. Trust me, Your Grace, Alara said, matching his tone. I'm not here for romance either. I'm here to save my family. You're just the means to do it. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise? Respect? It was gone too quickly to tell. Then we understand each other, he said. Good. You can go. Dismissed, like a servant. Alara felt her jaw tighten, but she nodded and turned to leave. Miss Whitlock? She stopped at the door, looked back. Cassian was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. My mother may have forced this situation, but I'm not unreasonable. If you need anything, within reason, let Mrs. Copeland know. I'll see it's taken care of. It wasn't kindness exactly. More like fairness. An acknowledgement that she was as stuck in this as he was. Thank you, Alara said. She made it back to her room before the shaking started. Not fear exactly. More like the aftermath of too much adrenaline. She'd just stood toe-to-toe with the Duke. She'd argued with him, matched him, and somehow survived. Madame Bisset appeared at dawn the next morning. Up, she commanded. We have 3 weeks to make you passable. There's no time to waste. The training was brutal. Hours of posture drills, elocution exercises until Alara's throat hurt, lessons on which fork to use, how to enter a room, how to make small talk without revealing you had nothing in common with anyone present. Dancing. God, the dancing. Her feet were covered in blisters by day 3. Again, Madame Bisset would say, unmoved by Alara's stumbles. A duchess does not apologize for taking up space. Again. The evenings were spent reading. The dowager provided stacks of books about the families Alara would need to know, the history she was supposed to be familiar with, the current political landscape. Alara's head spun with names and titles, and who was related to whom, and which families were feuding over what slight from 20 years ago. You won't remember it all, the dowager said during one of their sessions. But you need to know enough to avoid the worst mistakes. And when you don't know, you smile and let Cassian handle it. That's what fiancés do. They complement each other's weaknesses. If only the real fiancé was part of this plan. Alara hadn't seen Cassian since that first meeting. According to Mrs. Copeland, he was managing affairs in the North Estate. Translation: avoiding the entire situation. Fine. Let him hide. Alara had work to do. The dresses arrived in week 2, gowns that made her childhood dreams look shabby, silks and satins in colors she didn't have names for. The seamstresses pinned and adjusted and fussed until each one fit like it had been painted on. You'll wear the green one for the Ashford dinner party, the dowager decided, examining Alara like a general planning an attack. It brings out your eyes. Conservative enough to pass muster, interesting enough to be noticed. We want them curious, not scandalized. Not yet, anyway. Not yet. The dowager's smile was sharp. Oh, they'll be scandalized eventually, but by then, you'll have proven yourself indispensable. Timing, my dear, everything is timing. The Ashford dinner was in 5 days. Alara's first public appearance as the Duke of Vale's fiancée. She tried not to think about it, tried not to imagine all the ways it could go wrong. Instead, she practiced, walked with books on her head until she could do it in her sleep, memorized the family trees of the 20 most important houses, learned to smile with her eyes, not just her mouth, because apparently that mattered. On the 4th night, unable to sleep, she wandered the halls, got lost twice in the maze of corridors before finding herself in a conservatory she hadn't known existed. It was beautiful, glass walls, moonlight filtering through, plants from all over the world. And in the center, examining what looked like an orchid, was Cassian. He looked up as she entered, surprise crossing his face. Miss Whitlock, couldn't sleep? Too much in my head, she admitted. You? Same. He turned back to the orchid. This one's dying. I can't figure out why. Same soil, same water, same light as the others, but it's dying anyway. Alara moved closer, studying the plant. The leaves were yellowing at the edges. Too much water, probably. Orchids are finicky. They need air around their roots. If the soil stays too wet, they rot from the inside. Cassian blinked. How did you... I run a flower shop, remember? Ran. Past tense now, I suppose. The thought stung. Mira was watching it in her absence, but it felt like losing another piece of herself. Right. Cassian looked at the orchid again, something thoughtful in his expression. I'll try less water, thank you. They stood there in the moonlit silence. It should have been awkward. Somehow it wasn't. Are you ready? He asked finally. For the dinner party? No, Alara said honestly. But I'll pretend to be. Isn't that what this whole thing is about? Pretending? I suppose it is. Cassian's mouth quirked. For what it's worth, Madame Bisset says you're a fast learner. High praise from her. She also says I slouch. Everyone slouches compared to her standards. I'm convinced she has a steel rod surgically implanted in her spine. He paused. Look, about that first meeting, I was harsh. This situation isn't your fault. I shouldn't have taken it out on you. It was as close to an apology as she'd probably get from him. Alara nodded. Accepted. And for what it's worth, I'm sorry your mother forced this. I know it wasn't your choice. No, but maybe... Cassian trailed off, seemed to reconsider whatever he was going to say. Maybe it won't be as terrible as we both think. That's the spirit, Alara said dryly. Aim for not terrible. He actually laughed at that. A real laugh, surprised out of him. It changed his whole face, made him look younger, less like a marble statue and more like a person. I should go, Elara said. Big day tomorrow. More lessons in not embarrassing you. You won't, Cassian said. You don't know that. No, but I'm choosing to believe it anyway. He turned back to his orchid. Good night, Miss Whitlock. Good night, Your Grace. She was halfway back to her room when she realized he'd called her a fast learner, that he'd apologized, that they'd had something almost resembling a normal conversation. Maybe, she thought, this wouldn't be complete hell after all. The day of the Ashford dinner arrived with all the mercy of an execution. Elara was awake before dawn, too nervous to sleep. The green dress hung in her wardrobe like a beautiful threat. Madame Bisset arrived at noon for final preparations. We will go through everything one more time, she announced. Every detail must be perfect. They did. Posture, speech, which topics to avoid, how to deflect uncomfortable questions, what to do if someone was openly rude. By the time the maid came to help her dress, Elara's head was spinning with rules and protocols. The dress fit perfectly. The maid styled her hair in a way that looked effortless, but had taken an hour. Gloves hid her calloused hands. Pearls, borrowed from the Dowager's collection, sat at her throat like a collar. Elara stared at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back. You look beautiful, the maid said softly. Beautiful. Like a doll. Like someone else entirely. There was a knock. Mrs. Copeland. His Grace is waiting, miss. The carriage is ready. This was it. No more rehearsals, no more practice. This was real. Elara walked downstairs on legs that felt like water. Cassian was waiting in the foyer, dressed in formal evening wear that made him look every inch the Duke. His eyes widened slightly when he saw her. You look, he cleared his throat, suitable. You look uncomfortable, Elara said. His mouth twitched. I despise these events, but Mother insists. Of course she did. The Dowager appeared from the drawing room, assessing Elara with a critical eye. Good. You'll do. Remember, you're in love, disgustingly so. Society expects newlyweds to be insufferable. Give them what they expect. How exactly am I supposed to... Elara started. Touch, the Dowager interrupted. Nothing scandalous. A hand on his arm, standing close. Small glances when you think no one's watching, but make sure they are watching. It's theater, my dear. Commit to the role. Cassian looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him. Elara felt the same way, but there was no backing out now. The carriage ride was silent. Cassian stared out one window, Elara out the other, the space between them charged with anxiety and dread. We'll stay an hour, Cassian said finally. 2 at most. Make the rounds, let them get a look at you, then leave before anything can go catastrophically wrong. Optimistic of you to assume it won't go wrong immediately. I'm hoping they'll be too shocked by your existence to think of good insults right away. We can use that window. Despite everything, Elara almost smiled. Solid plan. The Ashford estate was blazing with light when they arrived. Carriages lined the drive. Music and laughter spilled from the windows. Elara's stomach clenched. Cassian must have noticed because he said quietly, You don't have to do this. We can turn around right now. I'll tell Mother it was my decision. Elara thought of her father, of Mira and Thomas, of the 500 pounds waiting at the end of 3 months. No, she said. I'm ready. She wasn't, but she would be. Cassian offered his arm as they approached the entrance. Elara took it, feeling the solid warmth of him through the fabric. Real. This was real. The doors opened. A footman announced them. His Grace, the Duke of Vale, and Miss Elara Whitlock. And just like that, every conversation in the room stopped. Every eye in the Ashford ballroom turned toward them like synchronized weapons. The musicians faltered mid-note before recovering. Conversations died into whispers that spread like wildfire through silk and diamond-studded crowds. Elara felt Cassian's arm tense under her gloved hand. He didn't move, didn't acknowledge the sudden attention, just stood there like this was perfectly normal, like he brought commoners to society events every week. Smile, he murmured without moving his lips. They're waiting for you to bolt. So Alara smiled. Not the demure, apologetic smile she'd practiced with Madame Bisset, but something else. The smile she used when customers tried to shortchange her at the shop. Polite steel. A woman detached from the nearest cluster of guests. 60s, dripping in sapphires, face arranged in an expression of benevolent curiosity that didn't reach her eyes. Lady Ashford herself. Cassian, darling, she air-kissed near his cheek. We were beginning to think you'd forgotten how to socialize entirely, and you've brought a guest. Her gaze slid to Alara like a blade testing for weakness. How unexpected. Lady Ashford, may I present Miss Alara Whitlock? Cassian's voice was smooth, bored even, like this was the most tedious introduction he'd ever made. My fiancée. The word landed like a stone in still water. Ripples of shock spread visibly through the room. Lady Ashford's smile froze. I'm sorry. Did you say fiancé? I did. How sudden? The word dripped with implications. Lady Ashford's eyes narrowed, cataloging Alara's dress, her jewelry, her face, looking for the flaw. I don't believe we've had the pleasure, Miss Whitlock. Which family are you from? The trap was obvious. No matter how Alara answered, it would reveal her as an outsider. Cassian opened his mouth, but Alara spoke first. No one you'd know, Lady Ashford. My family deals in flowers, not titles. She kept her voice light, conversational. Though we did provide the arrangements for your daughter's wedding last spring. The white roses? Those were ours. It was a gamble. Alara had handled that order herself, remembered the demanding specifications, the last-minute changes, remembered being treated like furniture by Lady Ashford's staff. Recognition flickered in the older woman's eyes, followed by something that looked like outrage. The florist's daughter. The florist herself, actually. Alara tilted her head. I run the shop. Ran. Things change. Indeed they do. Lady Ashford's voice could have cut glass. How enterprising of you, Cassian. I had no idea your tastes ran so democratic. My tastes, Cassian said, voice gone cold, are none of your concern, Margaret. Now, if you'll excuse us, I see Lord Hampton. We have business to discuss. He steered Alara away before Lady Ashford could respond. Alara caught a glimpse of the woman's face, fury barely masked by manners. That went well, Alara muttered. You called her by her first name. She called me enterprising like it was an insult. I figured we were even. Alara glanced up at him. Was that wrong? Should I have been more? No? Something that might have been approval flickered in Cassian's expression. No, that was actually perfect. Refusing to be cowed makes them uncertain. Uncertainty we can use. They made it 3 steps before the next assault. Vale, is it true? A man in his 40s, ruddy-cheeked and grinning, blocked their path. Engaged? You? Hell must have frozen solid. Winterborn. Cassian didn't sound pleased. May I present? Yes, the mysterious fiancé everyone's suddenly whispering about. Lord Winterborn's eyes traveled over Alara with the subtlety of a tavern drunk. Pretty thing. Where'd you find her? I didn't think you left your study long enough to meet anyone. We met through mutual interests, Alara said, before Cassian could answer. Books, actually. I was delivering an order to the estate library. It was close enough to truth to be believable, and it made her sound slightly less like purchased goods. Winterborn's eyebrows rose. A merchant's daughter who reads? How modern! He leaned closer, whiskey breath washing over them. Tell me, Miss, Whitlock, was it? Do you find our world terribly dull after the excitement of trade? The condescension was thick enough to choke on. Alara felt Cassian's arm tense again, but she squeezed his hand gently. She could handle this. On the contrary, Lord Winterborn, I find it fascinating. So many rules, so much pageantry. It's like watching a very elaborate play where no one's allowed to break character. She smiled sweetly. Though I do miss the honesty of commerce. When someone dislikes you in trade, they say so directly. Much more efficient than all this. Dancing around. Winterborn blinked, laughed. She's got spirit, Vale, I'll give you that. Careful, she doesn't eat you alive. He wandered off, still chuckling. Cassian exhaled slowly. You're enjoying this, he said, sounding slightly horrified. I'm really not. Elora's smile felt brittle. But if I'm going to be a spectacle, I might as well make it interesting. My mother warned me you had a stubborn streak. Your mother has no idea. Elora spotted another group approaching and straightened. Here we go again. The next hour was an endurance test. They were introduced to dozens of people whose names Elora immediately forgot, each one probing for information, searching for scandal. The women were worse than the men, smiling with their mouths while their eyes calculated, catalogued, judged. Your dress is lovely, one simpered, though perhaps a touch simple, for such an important event. I prefer understated, Elora replied. Lets the person shine rather than the fabric. And your family estate? Where is it located? We don't have one. We have a shop in the merchant quarter. How quaint. Quaint, charming, interesting, democratic. Every compliment was an insult wrapped in silk. Elora smiled through all of it, her jaw starting to ache. Cassian stayed close, his presence a solid wall at her back. Whenever someone got too pointed, too cruel, he'd deflect with practiced ease. They worked in sync without planning to. She'd parry, he'd redirect, they'd move on before blood could be drawn. It was exhausting. I need air, Elora finally whispered during a brief lull. Just 5 minutes. Cassian nodded toward a set of French doors. Terrace. I'll make excuses. The night air was cold and perfect after the stifling ballroom. Elora leaned against the stone balustrade, letting the chill seep through her gloves. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against the stone to stop it. You're doing better than expected. Elora spun. A woman stood in the shadows near the door, young, maybe Elora's age, with dark hair and darker eyes. Beautiful in that effortless way that came from generations of good breeding. I'm sorry, have we met? Elora asked. Not formally. I'm Vivian Ashford, Lady Ashford's niece. The woman moved closer, and there was something sharp in her expression. Not quite hostile, more like interested. That was quite a performance in there. It wasn't a performance. Everything here is a performance, Miss Whitlock. Surely you've noticed. Vivian pulled a cigarette case from somewhere in her gown, lit one with practiced ease. They're absolutely scandalized, you know. Half of them think Cassian's lost his mind. The other half think you're a fortune hunter who somehow trapped him. And what do you think? Vivian exhaled smoke into the darkness. I think you're either very brave or very stupid. Maybe both. This world eats people like you for breakfast. People like me. Outsiders, merchants. Anyone without the right blood or the right connections. Vivian's smile had teeth. I'm an Ashford by marriage, not birth. My father was a banker, self-made, wealthy, but not aristocracy. They've never let me forget it. And I've been here 15 years. The warning was clear. Elora leaned back against the balustrade. So why are you telling me this? Because I'm bored. And because watching you go toe-to-toe with these vultures is the most entertainment I've had in months. Vivian took another drag. Also because Cassian Vale is one of the few decent men in this cesspool, and I'd hate to see him destroyed by his mother's schemes. You think that's what this is? A scheme? Isn't it? Vivian's eyes were knowing. The Dowager is brilliant, ruthless, and never does anything without 3 backup plans. You showing up out of nowhere engaged to her hermit son? That's not romance, darling. That's strategy. Elora said nothing. Vivian laughed softly. Thought so. Well, here's some free advice from someone who survived the integration. Don't try to become one of them. You'll fail and they'll smell the desperation. But don't be too defiant either, or they'll make you the villain. Find the middle ground. Be interesting enough to talk about, but not threatening enough to destroy. And whatever you do, don't let them see you bleed. That's a lot of rules for people who claim to value honesty. Who said they value honesty? Vivian stubbed out her cigarette. They value power. Everything else is theater. The sooner you understand that, the better your chances of surviving. She moved toward the door, paused. Oh, and watch out for Caroline Pemberton. The blonde in the blue gown. She's had her sights set on Cassian for years. She will not be happy about you. Vivian slipped back inside before Alara could respond. Alone again, Alara tried to process the conversation, tried to decide if it was genuine advice or another kind of trap. The door opened again, Cassian this time, looking harried. There you are, we need to… He stopped, studied her face. What's wrong? Nothing, just processing. Alara straightened. Lady Ashford's niece was here. Vivian. Vivian Ashford is harmless. Sharp-tongued, but harmless. Cassian glanced back toward the ballroom. Unlike Caroline Pemberton, who is currently holding court about how inappropriate our engagement is, we should probably, let me guess, make an appearance, prove we're a united front, show them the criticism doesn't touch us? You're learning, Cassian offered his arm. Ready for round 2? Absolutely not, but let's go anyway. They walked back into the fray together. Caroline Pemberton was exactly as Vivian had described, blonde, beautiful, and radiating barely controlled fury beneath a veneer of perfect manners. She was surrounded by other young women, all of them watching Alara like cats watching a mouse. Miss Whitlock? Caroline's voice was honey over poison. We were just discussing your engagement. Such a surprise to everyone. You must tell us how you managed to catch the Duke of Vale's attention. We're all absolutely dying to know. The trap was obvious. Any answer would sound either calculating or naive. Alara saw Cassian open his mouth to intervene, and she squeezed his arm. I didn't catch anything, Miss Pemberton. We simply found each other interesting. Alara kept her voice mild. Sometimes chemistry defies logic. Chemistry? Caroline's smile was razor sharp. How romantic. And what does your family think of this match? Your father must be beside himself with joy. The mention of her father hit like a fist, because her father didn't know, couldn't know. He was too ill to understand the deal his daughter had made. My father approves of anything that makes me happy, Alara said carefully. And does this make you happy? Leaving your little flower shop to play Duchess? Caroline tilted her head. It must be quite the adjustment, all these rules and expectations, so different from trade. Actually, there are many similarities, Alara said. Both require understanding what people want, reading their needs, providing value. The only difference is the price tags and the pretense. One of Caroline's companions gasped. Caroline's eyes went cold. How mercenary of you. Is that how you see marriage? A transaction? Isn't it? Alara felt Cassian stiffen beside her but pressed on. Your world certainly treats it that way. Family alliances, estate mergers, breeding for bloodlines. At least in trade we're honest about the exchange. The silence was deafening. Alara realized she'd gone too far, said too much. But the words were out now. Caroline's smile turned genuine for the first time. The smile of a predator who'd just confirmed her prey was wounded. Well, she said softly, I suppose we know where we stand. How refreshing. She turned to Cassian. Your Grace, I do hope you know what you're doing. Some acquisitions prove more costly than anticipated. She swept away, her entourage following. The other guests were staring now, no longer bothering to hide it. We're leaving, Cassian said quietly. Now. He didn't wait for agreement, just steered Alara toward the exit. They collected their coats in silence. The carriage ride back was even quieter, a thick, suffocating quiet that made Alara's chest tight. I'm sorry, she finally said. I shouldn't have… No. Cassian's voice was flat. You shouldn't have. That was… stupid. I know. She baited me and I took it. I made everything worse. Actually, I was going to say it was honest. Cassian turned to look at her, his expression unreadable in the darkness. Suicidal, but honest. You basically confirmed every suspicion they had about you being a fortune hunter. I'm not… I know that. You know that. But they don't, and now you've given them ammunition. He rubbed his face. Caroline will spread this everywhere. By tomorrow, half of London will think you're a calculating opportunist who tricked me into this engagement. Alara's stomach dropped. Can we fix it? Maybe. If we're very careful and very lucky. Cassian leaned back against the seat. My mother is going to be furious." He was right. The dowager was waiting when they arrived home, her expression glacial. "My study. Both of you. Now." The dowager's study was colder than the night outside. She stood behind her desk like a general preparing to execute deserters. "Explain," she said, "why I'm receiving urgent messages about my son's fiancée, comparing marriage to a business transaction in front of Caroline Pemberton and half the peerage." "It was my fault," Alara started. "She was trying to—" "I don't care what she was trying to do. I care what you did." The dowager's voice could have frozen fire. "You had one job tonight. Be charming. Be forgettable. Instead, you confirmed every prejudice they hold about your class." "They were never going to accept me anyway," Alara shot back. "No matter how perfectly I smiled or how demurely I acted, I'm the florist's daughter. I'm trade. To them, I'm barely human." "So you decided to prove them right?" The dowager slammed her hand on the desk. "You think honesty is a virtue in their world? It's not. It's a weapon they'll use to gut you. Every honest word you spoke tonight became ammunition for your enemies." "Then maybe this whole plan is insane," Alara was shouting now, months of pressure finally cracking. "You want me to be someone I'm not? Say things I don't believe? Smile while they tear me apart? For what? 3 months of torture? It's not worth it." "It's worth 500 pounds and your father's life," the dowager said coldly. "Or have you forgotten what brought you here?" The words hit like a slap. Alara felt tears burn but refused to let them fall. "That's enough." Cassian's voice cut through the tension. "Both of you. Stay out of this, Cassian. You've been useless enough as it is." "I said enough." Something in his tone made even the dowager pause. "Miss Whitlock made a mistake tonight. She's acknowledged it. Browbeating her won't undo the damage." "No, but perhaps it will prevent future disasters." The dowager turned her gaze back to Alara. "You want to survive this world? Then learn its rules. Stop fighting every battle with truth. Use strategy. Use guile. Use whatever tools necessary, because right now, you're losing." Alara's hands clenched. "I'm not one of your chess pieces." "No, you're a liability I'm trying to salvage." The dowager's expression softened fractionally. "I chose you because you're strong, Miss Whitlock. But strength without discipline is just recklessness. You need to be smarter than them, not just braver." The fight drained out of Alara. She was exhausted, bone-deep, soul-tired, exhausted. "What do you want me to do?" she asked quietly. "Tomorrow, you will attend the Heatherfield garden party. You will be gracious, humble. You will apologize to Caroline if necessary. I won't apologize for telling the truth." The dowager's jaw tightened. "Then you'll lose. Is that what you want? To go home empty-handed, your father still dying, your pride intact but useless?" The cruelty of it stole Alara's breath. But the dowager wasn't wrong. Pride wouldn't save her family. Pride wouldn't pay the debts. "Fine," Alara whispered. "I'll go. I'll be perfect." "See that you are." The dowager waved dismissal. "Both of you out. I have damage control to plan." Alara fled. She made it to her room before the tears came, hot, angry tears that she muffled in her pillow so no one would hear. She'd been here 2 weeks and already everything was falling apart. A knock made her sit up, scrub at her face. "Go away." The door opened anyway. Cassian stood there, holding 2 glasses and a bottle of what looked like expensive whiskey. "I said, I heard you, I'm ignoring you." He came in, shut the door, poured 2 generous measures, handed her one. "Drink. You look like you need it." Alara took the glass. The whiskey burned going down, harsh and grounding. "You're not supposed to be in here. Scandal and all that." "We're already a scandal, might as well earn it." Cassian settled into the chair by the window, looking as tired as she felt. "For what it's worth, I don't think you were completely wrong tonight. Your mother does." "My mother thinks in campaigns and casualties." "You're a casualty she's willing to accept if it serves the larger strategy." He sipped his drink. "But she's also right that you need to be more careful. These people will destroy you if you give them the chance." "I don't know how to be what they want," Alara admitted. "I don't know how to smile while they gut me." You learn. Same as you learned everything else. Cassian's expression was unreadable. My mother's methods are brutal, but she's kept this family intact through 3 decades of political warfare. She knows what she's doing. Even if it means breaking me, she doesn't want to break you. She wants to sharpen you. He paused. There's a difference. Alara wasn't sure she believed that, but she was too tired to argue. They sat in silence for a while, drinking whiskey that cost more than her monthly rent used to. Outside, the moon painted everything silver. Can I ask you something? Alara said finally. Why did you really agree to this? Your mother said she forced you, but you could have fought harder. Tied it up in courts for years like you mentioned. Why didn't you? Cassian stared into his glass. Because she was right about one thing. I can't hide forever. There are people who want to see this family weakened, our estates broken up, our influence gone. An unmarried duke is vulnerable. It's stupid and archaic, but it's true. So you're using me too. We're using each other. That was always the deal. He looked at her. But for what it's worth, I don't think you're a fortune hunter. And I don't think you're calculating. I think you're desperate and doing what you have to do to survive. I understand that more than you'd think. It was the most honest he'd been with her. Alara felt something shift, not trust exactly, but maybe the foundation for it. The garden party tomorrow, she said. Will you be there? Yes, and I'll try to be more helpful than I was tonight. Cassian stood, moved toward the door, stopped. Alara, don't let them make you into someone you're not. Find the balance, yes, but don't lose yourself completely. That's not survival. That's surrender. He left before she could respond. Alara lay awake long after, his words circling her mind. Don't lose yourself. But how did you stay yourself when everything about you was wrong for the world you'd been thrown into? The garden party was at noon. Madame Bisset arrived at dawn, grim-faced and determined. We will practice, she announced. Every scenario, every possible conversation. You will not fail again. They drilled for hours. Appropriate responses to insults, how to deflect without confronting. The art of the non-answer. By the time the carriage arrived, Alara's head ached and her voice was hoarse. The dress for today was pale yellow, sunshine and innocence, calculated to make her look young, harmless, not threatening. Cassian was waiting by the carriage, looking like he'd slept as poorly as she had. Ready? He asked. No, but that seems to be my permanent state lately. His mouth twitched, almost a smile. At least you're consistent. The Heatherfield estate was beautiful, all manicured gardens and perfect hedges. Ladies in pastel gowns drifted like butterflies. Men clustered near the refreshment tables, discussing politics and horses. And standing near the rose arbor, surrounded by admirers, was Caroline Pemberton. Showtime, Cassian murmured. They approached slowly. Caroline saw them coming, her smile sharpening. Your Grace, Miss Whitlock, how unexpected to see you today. I thought perhaps after last night. She let the sentence trail off, loaded with implication. Last night was memorable, Alara said carefully. Though I fear I may have spoken too bluntly. I'm still learning the nuances of polite society. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was close enough to pass for contrition. Caroline's eyes narrowed. How refreshing. Tell me, are you enjoying the gardens, or do you find them too formal compared to your professional arrangements? The barb was there, hidden under sweetness. Alara felt Cassian's hand at the small of her back. Support or warning, she wasn't sure. I find them lovely, Alara said. Though I confess I prefer wildflowers to cultivated beds. There's something honest about things that grow without instruction. Honest? Caroline's smile was poisonous. Such an interesting word choice for someone in your position. And what position is that, Miss Pemberton? Why, Duchess in training, of course. Or trying to be. Caroline glanced at Cassian. Though one does wonder how the training is progressing. Some skills, after all, cannot be taught. They must be bred. The insult was clear. Bred. Bloodlines. Everything Alara would never have. Cassian's hand tightened on her back. She felt him about to speak, to defend her, and something in her snapped. No. She was done being defended, done being protected like she was fragile. You're absolutely right, Miss Pemberton, Alara said clearly. Some things can't be taught, like grace under pressure, or actual wit instead of just cruelty dressed up in manners. Those do seem to be genetic failures in some families. The gasps around them were audible. Caroline's face went white, then red. How dare you? I dare quite a bit, actually. It's one of my common-bred qualities. Alara kept her voice level, conversational even. Now, if you'll excuse us, I see Lady Ashford. I really should thank her for last night's hospitality. Cassian? She walked away before Caroline could respond, before her own courage could fail. Cassian followed, and she could feel the tension radiating off him. They made it behind a hedge before he spoke. That was stupid. I know. Your mother will kill me. But I couldn't. She kept pushing, and I just... Alara's hands were shaking again. I'm sorry. I know I was supposed to be humble and gracious, and I just made everything worse again. Cassian was quiet for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. Actually laughed. What? Alara stared at him. Why are you laughing? This isn't funny. You called Caroline Pemberton genetically defective to her face. Cassian was grinning now, the first real smile she'd seen from him. In front of half the peerage. My mother is going to lose her mind. That's why you're laughing. Yes, because Caroline has spent years being the untouchable queen of society. Everyone's afraid of her connections, her family's influence. And you just eviscerated her with a smile on your face. He shook his head. It was brilliant and suicidal in equal measure. So, you're not angry? Oh, I'm terrified. My mother will probably kill us both, but watching Caroline's face? Cassian's grin widened. Worth it. A commotion from the main garden interrupted them. Raised voices. Someone was arguing. They moved closer, staying behind the hedge. Absolutely unacceptable. Who does she think she is? Caroline's voice shrill with fury. Someone who clearly doesn't know her place. Another woman. The Duke must be enchanted or insane. Mark my words, this engagement won't last. She'll be exposed for exactly what she is. A grasping little nobody trying to climb above her station. Alara felt the words like physical blows. Cassian's expression had gone cold. We should go, he said quietly, before this gets worse. But before they could move, another voice joined the conversation. Actually, I think she's exactly what Cassian needs. Alara froze. She knew that voice, the dowager. Helena, surely you can't approve Caroline's mother this time. Lady Pemberton. I don't need your approval, Margaret. My son chose Miss Whitlock. That's enough. The dowager's voice was ice and iron. And I'd suggest everyone here remember that insulting the Duke of Vale's intended is insulting the Duke himself and his family. I do hope that's clear. Silence. Then rustling fabric as people scattered. Alara and Cassian emerged from behind the hedge to find the dowager standing alone near the rose arbor, looking like an avenging angel in black silk. Your ladyship, Alara started. I can explain. Not here. The dowager's expression was unreadable. Carriage, now, both of you. The ride back was silent as a tomb. Alara prepared herself for the verbal destruction she knew was coming. But when they reached the estate, the dowager simply said, My study. 1 hour. Come prepared to explain yourselves. Then she swept away, leaving them standing in the foyer. Well, Cassian said, that went better than expected. She hasn't yelled yet. She's probably saving it up. Probably. He glanced at her. For what it's worth, I meant what I said. Watching you take down Caroline was the most entertainment I've had in years. I'm glad my social suicide amuses you. It does. Quite a bit, actually. His expression sobered. But Alara, you can't keep doing this. Eventually the consequences will catch up. I know. She did know. But knowing and stopping were different things. An hour later, they stood in the dowager's study like children called to the headmaster. The dowager sat behind her desk, fingers steepled, expression carved from stone. Well, she said finally, that was educational. Alara blinked. I'm sorry? I said educational. You've now successfully antagonized one of the most influential families in London. Caroline Pemberton and her connections will do everything in their power to destroy you, to destroy this family by extension. The Dowager's eyes were hard. What do you have to say for yourself? That I'd do it again, Alara said quietly. She was cruel, deliberately cruel, and I'm tired of being the one who has to absorb it. Being tired doesn't change reality. No, but maybe reality needs to change. Alara lifted her chin. You chose me because I'm strong, because I survive. Well, I don't survive by rolling over. I survive by fighting back. The Dowager studied her for a long moment. Then, shockingly, she smiled. Good, she said. That's what I wanted to hear. I'm sorry, what? Cassian looked as confused as Alara felt. I've been testing you, Miss Whitlock, pushing you to see where you'd break, how you'd respond under pressure. The Dowager stood, moved to the window. Tonight proved something important. You won't be bullied into submission. You'll fight, even when it's stupid to fight. So, you're not angry. Oh, I'm furious. You've made my job infinitely harder. The Dowager turned back. But I'm also impressed. Surviving their world requires knowing when to bend and when to stand firm. You're still learning which is which, but at least you're willing to stand. Alara felt like the ground had shifted under her. I don't understand. You will? In time. The Dowager's smile turned sharp. Now then, let's discuss how we turn this disaster into an advantage, because Caroline Pemberton just declared war, and I do so love a good war. The Dowager's declaration hung in the air like a drawn blade. War. Against Caroline Pemberton and everyone who stood with her. Against half of London society, essentially. Alara's stomach twisted. What kind of advantage could possibly come from me insulting one of the most powerful women in your world? The kind where we control the narrative before they do. The Dowager moved to her desk, pulled out paper and pen, started writing. Caroline will spread her version of events, that you're vulgar, unsuitable, proving everything they suspected about common blood. We need to get ahead of that. How? Cassian asked. He'd moved to stand beside Alara, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. A united front, whether intentional or not. By making you the wronged party, the innocent outsider bravely enduring their cruelty. The Dowager's pen scratched across paper. I have contacts at 3 major newspapers. By tomorrow morning, there will be stories about the Duke of Vale's charming fiancée, a self-made businesswoman of remarkable character, who has faced unconscionable snobbery from certain jealous members of the ton. Alara blinked. You're going to print lies about what happened? I'm going to print a version of the truth that serves our purposes. There's a difference. The Dowager didn't look up. Caroline insulted you repeatedly. That's fact. You defended yourself with wit rather than running away crying. Also fact. The newspapers will simply emphasize the parts that make you sympathetic and her petty. That's manipulation. That's survival. The Dowager finally met her eyes. You wanted to fight back? This is how it's done in our world. Not with honest confrontation, that's too risky. With whispers and ink and carefully planted stories that shape how people think before they've even met you. It felt dirty, wrong. But Alara was learning that nothing about this world was clean. What do you need from me? She asked. Stay visible. We have the Thornbury Ball in 5 days. It's the event of the season. Everyone who matters will be there. You and Cassian will attend. You'll be gracious, poised, and desperately in love. You'll dance every dance, laugh at all the right moments, and show them that Caroline's attacks haven't touched you. And if they have? Alara's voice came out smaller than she wanted. The Dowager's expression softened fractionally. Then you pretend they haven't. Fake it until it becomes real. That's the only way through. The next 4 days were brutal. The newspapers did their work. Articles appeared painting Alara as a dignified victim of aristocratic bullying. But for every sympathetic piece, there were 2 more from Caroline's allies calling her a social climber, a fortune hunter, worse. Letters arrived at the estate by the dozen, some supportive, from people who apparently enjoyed watching the upper class squirm. Most were vicious, anonymous notes calling her filth, suggesting she do everyone a favor and disappear, threatening exposure of scandals that didn't exist. Alara tried to ignore them, failed. Each one was a cut that bled. Madame Bisset intensified training, dancing until Alara's feet bled through her slippers, conversation practice until she could deflect insults in her sleep, posture drills while balancing increasingly ridiculous items on her head. "You will be perfect," Madame Bisset declared, "or you will be destroyed. There is no middle ground now." Cassian was different too, more present. He started joining her for breakfast, helping her prepare for the day's social battles. They'd review the guest list for upcoming events, strategizing who to approach, who to avoid, what topics were safe. "Lord Bradshaw is sympathetic," Cassian said one morning, marking names on the list. "His wife is a tyrant, but he's reasonable. If you can win him over, he carries weight with the older generation." "And Lady Bradshaw?" "Avoid her entirely. She's Caroline's godmother." Alara studied the list, feeling overwhelmed. "There are so many of them. How do you keep track?" "Practice. Years of it." Cassian's expression was wry. "I may hate these events, but I'm not stupid. Knowing who holds power and why is basic survival." "Is that what we're doing? Surviving?" "Isn't it?" He looked at her properly then, and something in his gaze made her breath catch. "Though I suppose you've been doing that longer than I have, at least in ways that matter." It was the closest he'd come to acknowledging that her struggles might be real, might have weight. Alara felt something shift between them. Not quite trust, but recognition. Two people trapped in the same cage, learning to navigate together. The night before the Thornberry ball, Alara couldn't sleep. She paced her room until the sky started to lighten, then gave up and went to the conservatory. Her sanctuary when the walls closed in too tight. Cassian was already there, standing by the orchid she'd helped him save. It was blooming now, delicate white flowers that smelled like vanilla and secrets. "You were right," he said without turning. "About the water, it's thriving now." "I'm glad." Alara moved closer. "Couldn't sleep either?" "Tomorrow is going to be difficult." "That's one word for it." Cassian turned to face her. He looked tired, shadows under his eyes that matched her own. "Alara, if this becomes too much, if you want out, I can arrange it. The money would still go to your family. I'd make sure of it." The offer shocked her. "You'd let me leave? Even though it would ruin your mother's plans?" "My mother's plans aren't worth your sanity." He stepped closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "I know what I said at the beginning, that this was just business. But watching what they're doing to you, the letters and the gossip and the cruelty, no deal is worth that." Alara's throat tightened. "I'm not leaving." "Why not?" "Because I made a promise. To myself, to my family. I don't break promises." She managed a smile. "And because they want me to run, Caroline and all the rest. They want me to prove I can't handle their world. I won't give them the satisfaction. Even if it destroys you?" "I've survived worse than Caroline Pemberton's mean words." It wasn't quite true, but Alara needed it to be. "I can survive this too." Cassian's expression did something complicated. "You're either the bravest person I've ever met or the most stubborn. Can I be both?" "Apparently." He reached out, hesitated, then gently tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was so unexpected, so careful, that Alara forgot to breathe. "You know, when my mother first told me about this arrangement, I thought she'd found the most desperate, pliable person she could. Someone who'd do exactly as told without question." "Disappointed?" "Opposite of disappointed." His hand lingered near her face. "You're nothing like what I expected, Alara Whitlock." "Good or bad?" "I'm still deciding." The moment stretched between them, charged with something neither seemed ready to name. Then Cassian stepped back, breaking the spell. "We should both try to sleep," he said, voice rougher than before. "Tomorrow requires us at our best." He left before Alara could respond. She stood alone among the orchids, her heart doing strange things in her chest, and wondered when the pretending had started to feel less like pretending. The Thornberry ball was held in a mansion that made the Ashford estate look modest. Crystal chandeliers the size of carriages, marble floors polished to mirrors, flowers, real ones, not Alara's kind, dripping from every surface in cascades of white and gold. Alara wore deep burgundy, a color the dowager had chosen specifically. "Let them see you're not afraid," she'd said, Red is power, confidence, everything they think you lack. The dress fit like armor. Alara tried to take comfort in that as they were announced. His Grace, the Duke of Vale, and Miss Alara Whitlock. Every head turned. The whispers started immediately. She could feel them like insects crawling on her skin. But she kept her spine straight, her chin high, and let Cassian guide her into the ballroom. Caroline was there, of course, center of a cluster of admirers wearing ice blue silk that made her look like a particularly beautiful snake. Their eyes met across the room. Caroline smiled. "She's planning something," Alara murmured. "Undoubtedly." Cassian's hand tightened on her arm. "Stay close to me. Don't let her separate us." They made the rounds. Lord Bradshaw was indeed sympathetic, his conversation warm if carefully neutral. Lady Thornberry, their hostess, was cordial in that way that meant nothing. Others were openly cold, turning away before introductions could be made. And then there were the men. The ones who looked at Alara like she was goods on display, who made comments just loud enough to hear about merchants' daughters and knowing one's value. One of them, Lord Hastings, had too much wine in him and not enough sense. He cornered them near the refreshment table, breathing gin and malice. "Tell me, Vale, how much did she cost? I might be in the market for something similar." Cassian went rigid. "Excuse me?" "Well, she is for sale, isn't she? That's how commerce works." Hastings grinned, showing too many teeth. "Or did she come with a discount for buying the whole package?" Alara felt Cassian about to react, violently, from the tension radiating off him. She stepped forward first. "Lord Hastings, I'd offer to explain how commerce actually works, but I doubt you've understood any transaction more complex than exchanging coin for drink." She smiled sweetly. "Perhaps start there and work your way up." Hastings' face went purple. "You little... Is there a problem here?" Vivian Ashford appeared like a guardian angel in emerald silk. "Lord Hastings, I believe your wife is looking for you. Something about your behavior being embarrassing? Oh wait, that's Constant, isn't it?" Hastings sputtered and retreated. Vivian turned to Alara, eyebrow raised. "You're making quite the collection of enemies, Miss Whitlock." "Seems to be my talent." Alara felt shaky but tried to hide it. "Thank you for the intervention." "Don't thank me. I just enjoy watching Hastings squirm." Vivian's gaze was sharp. "Though you might want to tone down the verbal evisceration. People are starting to notice you fight back. That makes them nervous." "Good. They should be nervous. That's the spirit that's going to get you killed." Vivian glanced at Cassian. "Your Grace, you might want to take your fiancée somewhere quieter. She's about to snap, and this crowd will eat her alive if she does." Cassian nodded. "The terrace." "Now." But before they could move, the music changed. A waltz. The dance that opened the second half of the evening, traditionally the most important dance, where the host couple led and everyone watched. Lady Thornberry appeared before them, smile thin and sharp. "Your Grace, I believe this dance was promised to me? Our arrangement from last month?" Cassian's jaw tightened. Alara understood immediately. Refusing would be an insult to their hostess. Accepting meant leaving Alara alone in a ballroom full of people who hated her. "Of course, Lady Thornberry." Cassian looked at Alara, apology in his eyes. "I'll only be a moment." "Take your time. I'm fine." She wasn't fine, but she couldn't say that. Cassian was led to the dance floor. Alara stood alone by the wall, feeling exposed, vulnerable. She saw Caroline moving through the crowd toward her, predatory intent clear. "Miss Whitlock, how unfortunate to find you unattended." Caroline's voice dripped false sympathy. "No doubt the Duke has many obligations. You'll have to get used to being set aside." "I'm perfectly comfortable. Thank you." "Are you?" Caroline moved closer, her admirers forming a semicircle that blocked escape. "I've been curious about something. Your family's shop. You still own it, yes?" The change of topic confused Alara. "My sister manages it now, but yes." "How interesting. And your father's medical expenses, they must be considerable. Lung fever, I heard. Terribly expensive to treat." Alara's blood went cold. "How do you know about my father?" "I make it my business to know things about people who interest me. And you, Miss Whitlock, interest me very much." Caroline's smile was poison. "It must be difficult balancing all those debts." The medicines alone would bankrupt a small business, unless, of course, someone else was paying. I don't know what you're implying, don't you? Caroline tilted her head. It's just that the timing is so curious. Your father falls ill, your family faces ruin, and suddenly you're engaged to one of the wealthiest men in England. What a fortunate coincidence. Around them, people were listening now, the whispers spreading like wildfire. Alara felt the trap closing. Cassian and I. Oh, spare me the romance, Caroline's voice cut like glass. We both know what this is. A transaction. You needed money. The dowager needed a puppet. The only question is how much you sold yourself for. The words were loud enough to carry. Gasps rippled through the crowd. On the dance floor, Cassian heard. Alara saw his head snap toward them, saw him try to extract himself from Lady Thornberry. That's not true, Alara said, but her voice shook. That's not how it happened. Isn't it? Then explain why the dowager paid off your family's debts the day after you moved into Vale Estate. Explain the physician's bills that suddenly disappeared. Explain the £500 promised to you when this farce ends. The silence was absolute. Alara felt the world tilt. How did Caroline know? Those details were private, confidential. Unless, there's a contract, Caroline continued, triumph bright in her eyes. I've seen it. 3 months of playing fiancé in exchange for money and cleared debts. A business arrangement dressed up in romance. Tell me, Miss Whitlock, how does it feel to be purchased? The cruelty of it, the calculated destruction, stole Alara's breath. She saw Cassian finally break free from the dance, pushing through the crowd toward her, saw the dowager across the room, face pale with fury. And she understood. This was the kill shot. Everything before had been testing the waters. This was Caroline destroying her completely, in front of everyone who mattered. Alara could run, could flee the ballroom in tears, confirming every suspicion, could let the lie collapse and lose everything, or she could fight. You're absolutely right, Alara said clearly. The crowd gasped. Cassian stopped mid-stride, shock crossing his face. Caroline's smile widened. There was a contract, Alara continued, voice steady now despite the terror flooding her veins. The dowager did offer me money. She did clear my debts. You have all your facts correct, Miss Pemberton. Congratulations on your detective work. Caroline's eyes gleamed with victory. Then you admit, I admit that when my father was dying and I had no options left, I made a desperate choice. I accepted help from someone who offered it. Alara turned to face the crowd, addressing all of them now. Yes, there was a contract. Yes, this started as an arrangement. Because I was poor and powerless and terrified, and the dowager gave me a way to save my family. Murmurs spread through the ballroom. She saw some faces twist with disdain, others with something that might have been pity. But here's what your contract doesn't say, Miss Pemberton. Here's what no paper can capture. Alara's voice grew stronger. It doesn't say that I've spent the last month learning your rules, your customs, trying to be worthy of a world that will never accept me. It doesn't say that I've endured your cruelty, your insults, your contempt, and kept coming back anyway. And it doesn't say that somewhere in the middle of all this pretending, she turned to Cassian, who stood frozen, eyes locked on hers. It became real. The words hung in the air like a confession. Truth or lie, Alara herself wasn't entirely sure anymore, but they felt true when she said them. I didn't choose to fall in love with Cassian Vale, she continued, voice softer now. It wasn't part of any plan or contract. It just happened. Because he's brilliant and kind and nothing like what I expected. Because he treats me like an equal when everyone else treats me like dirt. Because when I'm with him, I forget that I'm supposed to be pretending. Cassian's expression was doing complicated things. Shock, disbelief, something else she couldn't name. So yes, Miss Pemberton, you've exposed me. I'm a fraud. A commoner who dared to reach above her station. A merchant's daughter who fell in love with a duke. Alara lifted her chin. But I'm also a daughter who would do anything to save her father. A sister who takes care of her family. And a woman who refuses to apologize for surviving the only way I knew how. If that makes me unsuitable for your world, then your world is more broken than I thought. The silence was deafening. Then, from somewhere in the crowd, Someone started clapping. Slow, deliberate applause. Lord Bradshaw stepped forward, his applause joined by his wife despite her earlier coldness. Then others. Not many, but enough. A scattered showing of support that grew louder. Caroline's face went from triumph to fury to something like panic, and Cassian crossed the remaining distance to Alara in 3 strides, took her face in his hands, and kissed her. The crowd erupted. Gasps and applause and shocked exclamations, but Alara heard none of it. There was only Cassian's mouth on hers, gentle and fierce at once, his hands cradling her face like she was something precious. When he pulled back, his eyes were blazing. "She's right," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Every word. Yes, my mother arranged this. Yes, there was a contract. But somewhere in the middle of this mess, I fell in love with the most stubborn, brave, impossible woman I've ever met. And if any of you have a problem with that, you can take it up with me directly." The Dowager appeared beside them, her expression unreadable. For a terrifying moment, Alara thought she'd be furious at the deviation from the plan. Then the Dowager smiled. Actually smiled. "Well," she said, addressing the crowd, "I believe that settles any questions about the authenticity of my son's engagement. Lady Thornberry, thank you for a memorable evening. I believe we'll be leaving now." She swept toward the exit like a general claiming victory. Cassian took Alara's hand and followed, pulling her with him. The crowd parted like water, staring, whispering, shocked. They made it to the carriage before Alara's legs gave out. She collapsed onto the seat, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. "That was," she started. "Insane," Cassian finished. "Brilliant and insane. I just told everyone I love you." The words came out strangled. "In front of the entire peerage. That wasn't the plan." "No, but it worked." Cassian sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "Caroline tried to destroy you with the truth, and you turned it into a weapon. My mother couldn't have planned it better." The Dowager climbed into the carriage, still smiling that dangerous smile. "Indeed. Though I must say, Miss Whitlock, that was quite the gamble. Admitting to the contract could have buried us all." "I know, but lying wasn't working anymore. They already knew the truth. I just changed how they saw it." "Exactly." The Dowager settled into her seat. "You made yourself the heroine of a romance instead of a fortune hunter. The desperate girl who fell in love despite the circumstances. It's perfect. They'll eat it up." "Some of them will," Cassian said. "Caroline won't. Neither will her allies. Let them seethe. We've won this round." The Dowager's eyes gleamed. "Though there will be consequences. Caroline isn't the type to accept defeat gracefully." Alara didn't care about consequences. Not right then. She was too busy processing what had just happened. The kiss. The public declaration. The way Cassian had looked at her when he said he loved her. Had he meant it? Or was it just part of the performance, extending her improvisation into something believable? She was too afraid to ask. The carriage pulled up to the estate. The Dowager exited first, murmuring about damage control and morning newspapers. Cassian and Alara sat in silence for a moment. "That kiss," Alara finally said, "was that necessary?" Cassian interrupted. "To sell the story, to make them believe." "Right. Of course." Alara felt something in her chest crack. "Well, it worked. Very convincing." "Alara, I should go. It's late, and I'm exhausted." She climbed out of the carriage before he could stop her, practically fleeing into the house. She made it to her room before the tears came. Angry tears, frustrated tears. Tears she didn't fully understand, because some foolish part of her had hoped that kiss meant something real, that Cassian's words hadn't been entirely fabricated. But of course they had been. This was all fabrication, contract and lies and performances. The fact that she'd started to forget that was her own stupid fault. A knock on her door made her scrub at her face. "Not now, please." The door opened anyway. Cassian stood there, still in his evening clothes, looking disheveled and uncertain. "You need to stop ignoring me when I knock," Alara said. "You need to stop running away when we need to talk." He closed the door behind him. "That kiss was necessary, you said. I understood." "Let me finish." Cassian moved closer. "It was necessary. But it wasn't just strategy. It wasn't just performance. Ilara's heart kicked hard against her ribs. What are you saying? I'm saying that when you stood there in that ballroom and told everyone you'd fallen in love with me, I realized something. He stopped a foot away from her, hands clenched at his sides. I realized that I believed you. And then I realized why I believed you. Cassian, because I feel it too. The words came out rough, like they hurt. This started as a business arrangement, a way to solve mutual problems. But somewhere in the midnight conversations and the shared battles and watching you face down people who should terrify you, it stopped being fake. At least for me. Ilara couldn't breathe, couldn't think. You don't have to say this. The performance is over for tonight. I'm not performing. He reached out, cupped her face the way he had in the ballroom. I'm terrified, and I'm probably making a massive mistake. But I'm not performing. I think I'm falling in love with you, Ilara, and I have no idea what to do about it. That makes two of us, she whispered. He kissed her again, slower this time, deeper, without an audience to perform for. Just the two of them in the lamplight, the contract and the deal, and all the reasons this was complicated falling away. When they finally broke apart, Cassian rested his forehead against hers. This is going to be messy, he said. It already is messy. Messier then, he smiled slightly. The contract ends in 6 weeks. What happens then? I don't know. Ilara's hands had found their way to his chest, feeling his heartbeat. But maybe we figure it out as we go? That's terrifyingly vague. I know, but it's all I've got right now. Cassian pulled back enough to look at her properly. I can work with that. He left shortly after, propriety demanding they not be caught alone together. Ilara stood in her empty room, touching her lips, trying to process the earthquake that had just rearranged her entire world. The contract was still real, the 3 months still ticking down. But now there was something else layered underneath, something fragile and terrifying and real. She should have been happy, relieved. Instead, she felt the weight of new fear settling over her. Because falling in love hadn't been part of the plan. Falling in love meant the stakes had just gotten impossibly higher, and Caroline Pemberton was still out there, wounded and furious. The thought proved prophetic. 3 days later, a letter arrived, not anonymous this time. Caroline's family crest pressed into red wax. Ilara opened it with shaking hands. You've made a powerful enemy, Miss Whitlock. Enjoy your brief moment of victory. It will be your last. I know secrets about the Vale family that would shatter everything you've built. Secrets Cassian himself doesn't know. If you don't end this engagement within the week, I'll expose them all. Your choice. Walk away quietly or watch the man you claim to love be destroyed. Ilara read the letter 3 times, her blood turning to ice. Secrets? What secrets? She found the dowager in her study, showed her the letter without preamble. The older woman's face went pale as she read. No, the dowager whispered. She couldn't possibly know about... She cut herself off, eyes meeting Ilara's. You need to leave, now, tonight. What? Why? Because Caroline isn't bluffing. There are things about this family that must never come to light. If she exposes them, it won't just destroy our reputation. It will destroy Cassian. The dowager's hands were shaking. I underestimated her. I thought we had more time. But if she knows, if she really knows. Knows what? What secret is worth all this? The dowager looked at her for a long moment. Then, heavily, she said, Cassian isn't the legitimate heir. His father had an affair. Cassian is the result. Legally, he has no claim to the title, the estates, any of it. We've hidden it for 30 years, but if Caroline proves it, everything falls apart. The family loses everything. And Cassian, her voice broke. It would destroy him. Everything he is, everything he's built his identity on, would be a lie. Ilara felt the floor drop away. Does he know? No. His father made me swear never to tell him. He died believing he was legitimate, but there are documents, baptismal records, letters, hidden but findable if someone looks hard enough. Caroline must have found them. The magnitude of it crashed over Ilara. Cassian, illegitimate. His entire life built on a foundation of lies. and Caroline holding that knowledge like a loaded gun. So I leave, Alara said numbly. I end the engagement. That's what she wants. Yes, it might buy us time to— No, the Dowager blinked. Excuse me? No, I'm not leaving. Alara's hands clenched into fists. Caroline wants me gone because she thinks I'm the weak point. She thinks threatening Cassian will make me run. Well, I'm done running. You don't understand what's at stake. I understand perfectly, but there has to be another way. There has to be— Alara stopped, an idea forming. Crazy. Impossible, but maybe— What if we expose it first? She said slowly. Are you insane? That would— Hear me out. Caroline's power is in the secret, in the threat. But if we tell the truth ourselves, control the narrative the way we did at the ball, we take her weapon away and condemn Cassian to losing everything. Maybe. Or maybe we find a way to make it not matter. Alara was thinking fast now, pieces clicking together. What if we get ahead of it? Public announcement. Cassian's parentage, yes, but also everything he's done for the estates, for the tenants. Frame it as him being even more remarkable for building what he did without the legitimacy everyone assumed he had. That's insane, the Dowager repeated, but she was listening now. Maybe. But so was admitting to the contract. So was everything else we've done. Alara met her eyes. Caroline thinks Cassian's secret is his weakness. Let's make it his strength. He'll never agree to this. Then we don't ask him. Not yet. Not until we have a plan solid enough to work. Alara stood. You said you love a good war. Well, this is war, and I'm not surrendering, not to Caroline, not to anyone. The Dowager stared at her for a long moment. Then, incredibly, she smiled. Stubborn girl, you're going to get us all killed. Probably, but we'll go down fighting. The Dowager nodded slowly. Very well. But understand, if this fails, if Caroline exposes the truth before we're ready, there's no recovery, no second chances. Everything ends. I know. And you're willing to risk that? For a man you've known 2 months? Alara thought of Cassian in the conservatory, in the carriage, kissing her like she was air and he was drowning. Yes, she said simply. I am. The Dowager stood, moved to a locked drawer in her desk, pulled out a file folder thick with papers. Then we'd better get started, because Caroline won't wait long, and when she moves, it will be fast and brutal. We need to be ready. Alara took the folder, feeling its weight. Inside were 30 years of secrets, lies, and careful misdirection. The foundations of everything Cassian believed about himself, and she was about to help burn it all down. Either it would save him, or it would destroy everything. She just had to hope it was the former. The file folder sat on Alara's desk like a bomb waiting to detonate. She'd been staring at it for an hour, afraid to open it fully, afraid of what 30 years of carefully buried secrets would reveal. The Dowager had left her alone to process, to plan. But planning required understanding, and understanding required reading documents that would change everything. Alara finally opened the folder. Inside were letters, dozens of them, dating back 3 decades. From Cassian's father to a woman named Margaret Fenton. Love letters, explicit in their devotion and their physicality. Alara's face burned reading them, but she forced herself to continue. The timeline was damning. The affair had lasted 2 years, overlapping perfectly with Cassian's birth. There were baptismal records, altered. The original showed Margaret Fenton as mother, a hasty notation changing it to Helena Vale. Birth certificates with suspiciously faded ink. Witness testimonies that didn't quite align. And a letter. This one from Margaret herself, written to the late Duke. You promised me our son would be cared for. You promised he'd have everything. I trusted you when you said Helena would raise him as her own, that no one would ever know. But I'm dying now, and I need to hear you say it one more time. Promise me Cassian will never know what he is. Promise me he'll never feel the shame I've carried. Let him believe he belongs. Alara's throat tightened. Cassian had a mother he'd never known, a woman who'd loved him enough to give him away, to let him grow up thinking he was legitimate, protected. And Caroline wanted to destroy that protection, wanted to expose a truth that would shatter him. Alara's hands shook as she closed the folder. The magnitude of what she was considering, going public with this before Caroline could weaponize it, felt impossible. How did you tell someone their entire identity was a lie? How did you spin that into something survivable? A knock interrupted her spiraling thoughts. Cassian's voice came through the door. Ilara, are you awake? She shoved the folder into a drawer. Come in. He looked tired, hair disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. I saw the light under your door. Couldn't sleep either. No. The lie sat heavy. She wanted to tell him everything, to warn him. But the Dowager was right. They needed a solid plan first. Presenting him with the truth without a way forward would be cruel. Cassian settled into the chair by the window, the same one he'd occupied that first night with whiskey and unexpected honesty. I've been thinking about what Caroline might do next. She won't let the ballroom incident stand. Probably not. Alara's voice sounded strange to her own ears. Are you all right? You seem... He studied her face. What's wrong? Everything. Nothing she could say. Just tired. It's been a difficult few weeks. That's an understatement. Cassian leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Alara, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Her heart kicked into overdrive. Did he know? Had he somehow found out? What? Are you having second thoughts? About us? He looked vulnerable saying it, like the question cost him. Because if this has become too much, if the attacks and the scrutiny are... No! The word came out fierce. No second thoughts. Not about you. Then what? Because you're scared. I can see it. Alara wanted to tell him, wanted to lay out the whole terrible truth and let him make the choice. But she'd promised the Dowager 3 days to build a plan. 3 days to find a way through this that didn't end in total destruction. I'm scared Caroline won't stop, she said instead. It was true enough. I'm scared of what she might do next. So am I. Cassian's expression darkened. My mother is making inquiries, finding out what Caroline knows, what leverage she might have. We'll be ready for her next move. If only he knew his mother had already found the answer, that the leverage was him. Cassian, if something terrible came out, if there was a scandal that threatened everything, what would you do? He frowned. What kind of scandal? I don't know, hypothetically. If you had to choose between your title, your position, everything you've built, or the truth, which would you choose? That's an odd question. Humor me. Cassian was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. A month ago, I would have said the title, the position. Those things are what make me useful, what give me purpose. But now, he looked at her. Now I think the truth matters more, even if it costs everything else. Because what's the point of building a life on lies? The irony of it hit Alara like a physical blow. His whole life was built on lies, and she was about to help expose them. Why are you asking? Cassian pressed. No reason, just thinking about choices. Alara forced a smile. You should get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be difficult. They're all difficult now. But he stood, moved toward the door, stopped. Whatever you're worried about, we'll face it together. You know that, right? I know. The words felt like ash. After he left, Alara pulled the folder back out. She had 3 days to turn a catastrophe into a strategy. 3 days to find a way to make Cassian's illegitimacy something other than a death sentence. She needed help. Not the Dowager. The Dowager was already working the political angles, calling in favors, shoring up alliances. Alara needed someone who understood the social battlefield, who knew how people thought. She needed Vivian. The next morning, Alara sent a note to Vivian Ashford requesting a private meeting. The response came within an hour, an invitation to tea that afternoon at Vivian's townhouse. The Dowager raised her eyebrows when Alara told her, The Ashford niece? Why? Because she's survived integration into this world. She knows how they think. And she doesn't owe Caroline any loyalty. She also doesn't owe us any. The Dowager's gaze was sharp. What are you planning? To test an idea, to see if it's even possible to spin this the way I'm thinking. Alara met her eyes. You said Caroline won't wait long. We need to move fast. That means taking risks. Calculated risks, not reckless ones. I know the difference. Alara hoped that was true. Vivian's townhouse was smaller than the Vale estate, but elegantly appointed. She received Alara in a sitting room decorated in deep greens and gold, cigarette already in hand. "Miss Whitlock, this is unexpected." Vivian gestured to a chair. "Tea? Or something stronger?" "Tea is fine." Alara sat, trying to organize her thoughts. "How did you ask for help with something like this?" "You look terrible," Vivian observed. "Whatever's happening must be serious. Does this have to do with Caroline's latest threat?" Alara's head snapped up. "How did you know about that?" "Please, Caroline's been crowing about it to anyone who'll listen. She's got something on the Vale family, something big. She thinks she's won." Vivian took a drag from her cigarette. "I assume that's why you're here?" "Yes." Alara made a decision. Vivian had been kind before, in her way, and desperate times required desperate measures. "Can I trust you?" "That depends on what you're about to tell me." "Fair enough." Alara took a breath. "Caroline found out that Cassian is illegitimate. She's threatening to expose it unless I end the engagement." Vivian's cigarette paused halfway to her mouth. "Illegitimate, as in, his father had an affair. Cassian is the result. There are documents that prove it." Alara's words came faster now. "If Caroline makes this public, it destroys everything. The title, the estates, Cassian's entire identity. So I have a choice. Walk away and let her win, or find a way to make the truth work in our favor. And you want to do the latter." Vivian's eyes gleamed with something like respect. "You are either brilliant or completely insane." "Both, probably, but I need to know, is it even possible? Can we spin something like this into anything other than total disaster?" Vivian set down her cigarette, leaned back. "Tell me everything. The details, the timeline, what evidence exists." Alara did. She laid out the whole sordid story. The affair, Margaret Fenton, the altered records. Vivian listened without interrupting, her expression growing more thoughtful. When Alara finished, Vivian was quiet for a long moment. "It's bad," she finally said. "Legally, Cassian has no claim to anything. The estates would revert to the next legitimate heir, some cousin twice removed, probably. The title would be contested. The scandal would be enormous." "I know. But what if we framed it differently? What if instead of Cassian being the illegitimate son trying to hold on to what isn't his, he's the man who built something remarkable despite having no real claim to it? What if we make it about what he's accomplished rather than what he was born into?" "That's actually not terrible." Vivian's eyes narrowed, thinking. "The estates have thrived under Cassian's management. The tenants adore him. He's made reforms, improved yields, treated people fairly. If you could make the story about his merit rather than his birth—" "Exactly. Frame it as him being even more impressive for succeeding without the legitimacy everyone assumed he had." "It's still a massive risk. Half of society will never accept it. Bloodlines matter to these people. It's practically religion." "But the other half?" "The other half might be intrigued, especially the younger generation. There's a growing sentiment that merit should matter more than birth." Vivian lit another cigarette. "You'd need allies, people willing to publicly support Cassian despite the revelation. The Dowager is working on that. You'd also need the timing to be perfect. Announce it yourselves before Caroline can. Control the narrative from the start. And you'd need Cassian himself to be compelling, sympathetic. The wronged son who never knew the truth but triumphed anyway." "He doesn't know yet," Alara admitted, "about his parentage. We haven't told him." Vivian's eyebrows rose. "You're planning to upend his entire world, and you haven't even consulted him?" "We're waiting until we have a viable plan. Telling him the truth without a way forward feels cruel." "Telling him at all is going to be cruel, darling, but necessary." Vivian tapped ash into a tray. "When will you tell him?" "Tomorrow. We brief him tomorrow and announce the day after if we can move fast enough." "That's insane. You need at least a week to think." "We don't have a week. Caroline's deadline is 6 days. We need to be public before then." Vivian whistled low. "You don't do anything halfway, do you?" "Can't afford to." Alara leaned forward. "Will you help? Publicly, I mean. If we do this, we'll need voices supporting us, people who carry weight. You want me to back a bastard duke against one of the most powerful families in England? Yes. Vivian laughed. Actually laughed. You have absolutely no sense of self-preservation. I love it. She stubbed out her cigarette. All right, I'm in. But on one condition. What? You make sure Cassian is worth all this trouble. Because if he crumbles when the truth comes out, if he can't handle it, the whole plan falls apart. He needs to be strong enough to survive the exposure and come out fighting. He is. Alara said it with certainty she felt in her bones. He's stronger than he knows. Then you'd better hope you're right, because if you're wrong, this destroys all of you. Alara left Vivian's townhouse with a tentative ally and a growing list of what needed to happen. The Dowager met her at the estate with updates. I've secured support from Lord Bradshaw and 3 others in the House of Lords, the Dowager said, ticking off names. They'll stand with Cassian publicly when the announcement is made. Lady Thornberry is sympathetic. She's agreed to host us at her estate afterward, a show of continued acceptance. That's good. Vivian Ashford is in as well. The Dowager's eyebrows rose. The Ashford niece? Interesting choice. She's integrated successfully despite not being born into this world. People listen to her. True. The Dowager pulled out more papers. I've drafted a statement. We announce the truth about Cassian's parentage, emphasize his accomplishments, present it as a testament to his character that he's succeeded without legitimate claim. We frame him as a man of merit rather than birth. What about the estates? The title? That's more complicated. Legally, Cassian has no right to either. But we can argue that his management has been so superior that removing him would harm everyone involved. Tenants, workers, local economy. We make it about practicality over protocol. Will that work? Maybe. If we have enough support. If Cassian handles it well. If Caroline doesn't have ammunition we don't know about. The Dowager's expression was grim. There are a lot of ifs. When do we tell him? Tonight. We tell him tonight and announce tomorrow morning. The newspapers will carry it by afternoon. Caroline won't have time to counter. Alara's stomach twisted. He's going to hate us. Probably. But he'll understand eventually. He's practical enough to see this was the only move. The Dowager didn't sound convinced of her own words. They found Cassian in his study, buried in ledgers as usual. He looked up when they entered, immediately sensing something wrong. Both of you? Together? This can't be good. Sit down, Cassian. The Dowager's voice was gentle, which somehow made it worse. I'm already sitting. Then brace yourself. What we're about to tell you will be, difficult. Alara watched his face as the Dowager explained, watched confusion turn to disbelief, disbelief to horror, horror to something blank and terrible. He didn't interrupt, didn't speak, just sat there as his mother dismantled his entire understanding of himself. When the Dowager finished, silence filled the study like poison gas. You're lying, Cassian finally said. His voice was hollow. This is some kind of... This can't be... I have the documents. The Dowager placed the folder on his desk. Letters from your father to Margaret Fenton, birth records, baptismal certificates. It's all there. Cassian opened the folder with shaking hands, read for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. His face went progressively paler. My whole life, he whispered. Everything I thought I was. It's all a lie. Not everything. Alara couldn't stay silent anymore. What you've accomplished, what you've built, that's real. That's yours. Is it? He looked at her with eyes that had gone dead. I have no legal right to any of it. The estates, the title, this house. None of it's actually mine. It's more yours than anyone else's. You've worked for it, improved it, cared for it. Birth doesn't change that. Birth is everything in this world. Cassian's laugh was bitter. You of all people should know that. They've torn you apart for being a merchant's daughter. What do you think they'll do when they find out I'm a bastard? We're going to control the narrative, the Dowager said. We announce it ourselves tomorrow. Frame it properly. You as the man who succeeded despite illegitimacy, not because of assumed legitimacy. Tomorrow? Cassian's voice rose. You want to announce this tomorrow? Caroline Pemberton knows she's threatening to expose it. If we announce first, we control how the story is told. So this is about Caroline. Cassian stood, paced to the window. This is about your political games and your strategies, and I'm just, what, a piece on the board? You're my son, the Dowager said quietly. Everything I've done has been to protect you. By lying to me for 30 years? By letting me build my entire identity on falsehood? He turned, and Alara saw tears tracking down his face. I'm not even your son. Not really. I'm some affair's consequence that you agreed to raise. I raised you because I loved you. Because when your father brought you home, you were this tiny, helpless thing, and you looked at me with those eyes, and I— The Dowager's voice broke. You became mine, Cassian. Blood or not, you became mine. But I'm not really a Vale. You're more Vale than anyone. Alara moved to him without thinking. You've embodied everything this family is supposed to stand for. You've protected it, grown it, made it better. That's not about blood. That's about who you are. Who am I? Cassian's voice was ragged. Because I thought I knew. I thought I was the Duke of Vale, heir to a legacy going back centuries. Turns out I'm nobody, a pretender, an imposter. You're the man I fell in love with, Alara said fiercely. The man who treats his tenants like people, who reads until dawn because he cares about doing things right, who stood up for me when everyone else wanted me gone. That man is real, title or not, blood or not, that man is real. Cassian looked at her, something breaking in his expression. How can you still, after knowing this? Because I don't care about your bloodline. I never did. I care about you. She took his hands. And I know this is devastating. I know it feels like everything is ending, but we can survive this together. The announcement, Cassian said dully. You want me to stand up in front of everyone and admit I'm a fraud. We want you to stand up and prove that merit matters more than birth, the Dowager corrected. That you earned your position through work, not inheritance. No one will accept that. Some will. Not everyone. Maybe not even most. But enough. The Dowager moved closer. Cassian, I know this is terrible. I know I should have told you years ago, but I'm asking you to trust me one more time. This plan can work. We can survive this, but only if you're willing to fight. Cassian pulled away from both of them, moved to his desk, stared down at the evidence of his parentage. I need time, he said finally. I need to process this before I can make any decisions. We don't have time. The Dowager's voice was gentle but firm. Caroline's deadline is days away. We need to move tomorrow or lose the advantage. Then you've already lost it, because I can't do this tomorrow. I can't stand up and perform for people when my entire world just— He stopped, voice breaking. Get out. Both of you, I need to be alone. Cassian, Alara started. Please. The word was barely a whisper. Please, just go. The Dowager nodded, touched Alara's arm. They left together, closing the door softly. In the hallway, the Dowager sagged against the wall. That went worse than I expected. He needs time to grieve. We just destroyed everything he thought he knew. We don't have time for grief. The Dowager's face was drawn. If he won't agree to the announcement, we have to find another way. Maybe postpone, buy ourselves— No. Alara's voice was firm. We go forward. Tomorrow, like planned. Without him? That's suicide. Not without him. He'll come around. He just needs to see there's no other option. Alara straightened. I'll talk to him. Tonight. Make him understand. And if he still refuses? He won't. Alara had to believe that. He's stronger than he thinks. He just needs to remember it. She waited until midnight before going to Cassian's study. He was still there, surrounded by the scattered documents of his false identity, a mostly empty bottle of whiskey on the desk. I said I wanted to be alone, he said, without looking up. I know. I'm ignoring that. Alara closed the door behind her. We need to talk. We really don't. Yes, we do, because tomorrow morning we're making this announcement with or without you, and I'd really prefer it to be with you. That got his attention. He looked up, eyes red-rimmed. You can't be serious. completely serious. The plan is already in motion. The newspapers are prepared. Our allies are ready. We announce at 10 tomorrow morning. And if I refuse to participate? Then we do it anyway, and you look weak, like you're hiding or ashamed. Is that really how you want this story told? Cassian's jaw tightened. This is blackmail. This is survival. There's a difference. Alara sat across from him. I know you're devastated. I know this feels like the end of everything. But Cassian, this doesn't have to destroy you. It can be the making of you instead. How? By admitting I'm a fraud to everyone who's ever respected me? By admitting you succeeded without the advantages everyone assumed you had? By proving you're remarkable not because of blood, but because of who you are? Alara leaned forward. Caroline wants this secret to destroy you. The only way to stop her is to take away its power. Make it something you control instead of something she holds over you. I don't want to control it. I want it not to be true. I know, but it is true, and wishing won't change that. Her voice softened. Cassian, I've spent the last month learning to survive in a world that doesn't want me. You taught me that. You showed me how to be strong when everything feels impossible. Now I'm asking you to do the same. That's different. You chose to enter this world. I didn't choose to be born a bastard. No, but you can choose what you do with it now. Alara reached across the desk, took his hand. You can let it break you, or you can use it to prove that the things they value, bloodlines and titles and heritage, matter less than character, than work, than who you actually are. Cassian was quiet for a long time. What if they reject me anyway? What if we do all this and it still ends with me losing everything? Then at least we went down fighting. At least you didn't let Caroline Pemberton decide your fate. Alara squeezed his hand. And you won't lose everything, because I'll still be here. Your mother will still be here. The people who matter, we're not going anywhere. You say that now, but when the full weight of this scandal hits, when you're tied to a disgraced bastard instead of a duke, I'll still be here. Alara said it with absolute certainty. Cassian, I didn't fall in love with your title. I fell in love with you. The man who stays up until 3 in the morning making sure his tenants have proper housing, who rescues dying orchids, who treats me like an equal even when the rest of the world treats me like dirt. That man doesn't need a title to be worth loving. Something in Cassian's expression cracked. He turned his hand over, gripped hers tightly. I'm terrified. So am I. But we can be terrified together. She moved around the desk, and he pulled her into his arms, held her like she was the only solid thing in a dissolving world. I hate that you're right, he murmured into her hair. I hate that the only way through this is forward. I know, but you're strong enough. I promise you're strong enough. They stood like that for a long time. Then Cassian pulled back, wiped at his eyes. All right, he said. All right. We do this. Tomorrow. But I'm going to need you beside me when we make the announcement. I wouldn't be anywhere else. The Dowager had everything prepared. By 8 the next morning, the house was in controlled chaos. Staff running messages, lawyers reviewing statements, allies being briefed on the announcement. Cassian looked pale but determined in his formal wear. Alara wore deep blue, a color the Dowager said conveyed trust and stability. They stood in the entrance hall, waiting for the carriages that would take them to the newspaper offices. Ready? The Dowager asked. No, Cassian said. But let's do it anyway. The announcement was made at the offices of the London Chronicle, chosen because its editor was sympathetic. Cassian read the prepared statement, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. I stand before you today to address rumors regarding my parentage. It has come to my attention that questions exist about my legitimacy as heir to the Vale title and estates. Rather than allow these questions to fester in shadow, I choose to address them directly and honestly. My father, the late Duke of Vale, had an affair with Margaret Fenton. I am the product of that union. My birth was subsequently legitimized through legal means, and I was raised by the Dowager Duchess as her own son. These facts have only recently come to my attention. I understand this revelation will shock many. I am shocked myself, but I also recognize that while I cannot control the circumstances of my birth, I can control my response to them. For 30 years, I have managed the Vale estates to the best of my ability. I have worked to improve conditions for tenants, to increase yields, to honor the responsibilities entrusted to me. That work was real. That dedication was real. And it remains real regardless of my bloodline. I do not ask for sympathy. I ask only for fair judgment based on my actions rather than my parentage. The question before society is simple. Does merit matter or only blood? I hope to prove, through continued service, that the former can outweigh the latter. I will continue to manage the Vale estates unless legally barred from doing so. I will continue to honor my commitments and responsibilities, and I will face whatever consequences arise from this truth with as much courage and dignity as I can muster. Thank you. The reporters erupted with questions. Cassian ignored them, turned and left with Alara and the dowager flanking him. In the carriage, none of them spoke. The announcement would be in the afternoon papers. By evening, all of London would know. Now we wait, the dowager said quietly, and see how the pieces fall. The pieces began falling almost immediately. By noon, the drawing room was filled with letters, some supportive, many vicious. By afternoon, the first newspaper reactions appeared. The Chronicle was sympathetic as expected. The Times was cautiously neutral. The Guardian called it a scandal that undermined the very foundations of aristocracy. But there were surprising voices of support. Lord Bradshaw published a statement praising Cassian's honesty and competence. Lady Thornbury opened her home for a reception in Cassian's honor. Vivian Ashford gave an interview calling him the most qualified peer in England, regardless of birth. And common people, merchants, workers, the middle class, they loved it. The idea that someone could succeed through merit rather than bloodline resonated with them. Letters poured in from across England offering support. Caroline's response came that evening, a brief statement expressing shock and disappointment, suggesting Cassian should do the honorable thing and step aside from positions he had no right to hold. She's trying to paint you as grasping, the dowager analyzed, holding on to power you don't deserve. Maybe I am, Cassian said quietly. You're not. Alara was firm. You earned everything you have. Birth doesn't change that. The real test came 3 days later, a session of the House of Lords where Cassian's right to his seat would be challenged. Caroline's father, Lord Pemberton, led the charge. Alara wasn't allowed in the chamber, but she waited outside with the dowager, pacing the marble floors. He'll be fine, the dowager said, though she looked worried. He knows his facts. He's prepared. That's not what I'm worried about. I'm worried they'll tear him apart anyway. Hours passed. Finally, the doors opened. Lords streamed out, their expressions mixed. Some looked satisfied, others troubled. Cassian emerged last, looking exhausted. But when he saw Alara, he smiled. Well? She demanded. They voted. I keep my seat, barely, but I keep it. He pulled her into a quick embrace, not caring who saw. Pemberton tried to have me removed. Lord Bradshaw gave a speech about merit versus birth that apparently swayed enough votes. It was closer than I'd like, but we won. We won, Alara repeated, feeling the weight of it. We actually won. The title is still contested. The estates are under review. There will be years of legal battles. Cassian's expression sobered. But I survived the first strike. That's something. It was more than something. It was everything. That night, the dowager hosted a small dinner for their supporters. Lord Bradshaw attended, as did Vivian, Lady Thornbury, and a handful of others who'd stood with them publicly. To Cassian Vale, Lord Bradshaw raised his glass, who proved today that England's future lies not in bloodlines, but in capability. Hear, hear, Vivian added. And to Miss Whitlock, who apparently has nerves of steel and the strategic mind of a general. Alara felt her face heat. I just did what needed doing. You did what most people wouldn't have dared, Lady Thornbury corrected. You took a scandal that should have destroyed you both and turned it into a referendum on merit. That takes remarkable courage. Later, after the guests had left, Cassian found Alara on the terrace, the same terrace where she'd first spoken to Vivian, where this whole mad journey had taken another turn. Thank you, he said simply. For what? For refusing to let me give up. For seeing a path forward when I only saw disaster. He took her hand. I still don't know what happens next. The legal battles could take years. I might lose everything in the end. Then we'll deal with that when it comes. But tonight, right now, you won. You stood up in front of everyone and told the truth, and you survived. That's worth celebrating. Cassian pulled her close, kissed her softly. I love you. I should have said it before, should have said it properly. But I love you, Alara Whitlock. Regardless of what happens with titles and estates and all of it, I love you. I love you too. The words came easily now. And we're going to figure this out, together. Together, he agreed. They stood there under the stars, survivors of a battle that wasn't quite over but was at least survivable. The war with Caroline wasn't finished. She'd retreat, regroup, come back with new weapons. The legal challenges would drag on. Society's judgment would remain harsh. But they'd proven something important today, that the truth, properly wielded, could be more powerful than secrets, that merit could challenge birth, that love and courage and stubbornness could win against impossible odds. It wasn't the ending, but it was a beginning. And for the first time since this whole arrangement started, Alara believed they might actually make it through to the other side. The victory in the House of Lords should have been the end of it. It wasn't. Caroline Pemberton didn't retreat gracefully. Instead, she escalated. Within a week, she'd convinced 3 separate families to file legal challenges to Cassian's control of the Vale estates. Newspapers sympathetic to her cause ran editorials questioning whether England should allow base-born pretenders to hold positions of power. Anonymous letters threatening violence arrived daily. She's cornered, the Dowager said, reviewing the latest legal filings. That makes her more dangerous, not less. Alara sat across from her in the study they'd commandeered for war planning. 6 weeks had passed since the announcement. 6 weeks of constant battles, legal and social. The 3-month contract that had started this whole mess had 1 week left. Not that it mattered anymore. The contract felt like ancient history compared to everything that had happened since. What's our countermove? Alara asked. Patience. Let her exhaust herself attacking. The Dowager's smile was thin. Caroline's making mistakes. She's too aggressive, too visible. People are starting to notice. Notice what? That she's obsessed, that this vendetta is personal rather than principled. It makes her look petty. The Dowager set down the papers. We continue to take the high road. Cassian manages the estates brilliantly, you two appear perfectly in love, and we let Caroline destroy herself. It was sound strategy. But Alara was tired of playing defense. What if we went on the offensive instead? What did you have in mind? Caroline's power comes from her family's influence, her father in the Lords, her connections throughout society. But what if we undermined that, found something that makes them vulnerable? The Dowager's eyes gleamed. You want to dig up dirt on the Pembertons. I want to level the playing field. Alara leaned forward. She's been attacking us for months. It's time she faced consequences. Careful, Miss Whitlock. Revenge is a dangerous game. This isn't revenge. It's survival. Alara met her gaze steadily. You said yourself, Caroline won't stop until she's destroyed us or destroyed herself. I'm just suggesting we help the process along. The Dowager considered for a long moment. I'll make inquiries, see what skeletons the Pemberton family has hidden. But Alara, if we do this, we can't be careless. One wrong move and we become the villains. I know, but I'm tired of being the victim. Cassian found them an hour later, still plotting. He looked exhausted. He'd been working 18-hour days managing the estates while simultaneously defending his right to do so in court. Please tell me you're planning something devious, he said, collapsing into a chair. I could use good news. Define devious, Alara said. Anything that makes Caroline Pemberton as miserable as she's made us. Then yes, very devious. Alara moved to him, ran her hands through his hair. He leaned into the touch, like a man starving for affection. How are the northern tenants? Grateful, loyal, confused why anyone would want to remove me when the estates are thriving. He caught her hand, pressed a kiss to her palm. They're writing letters of support, hundreds of them. Common people testifying that merit matters more than blood. That's good. That helps. It does, but I'm still so tired, Alara. This fight is endless. Every time we win one battle, two more spring up. His voice dropped. Sometimes I wonder if it's worth it. If I should just step aside, let some distant cousin have the title, and walk away. You don't mean that. Don't I? Cassian looked up at her, and the vulnerability in his expression broke her heart. What am I fighting for? A title I have no legal right to? Estates that should belong to someone else? My pride? You're fighting for the people who depend on you, for the tenants whose lives you've improved, for the principle that what you do matters more than what you're born into. Alara knelt beside his chair. And you're fighting because giving Caroline what she wants would destroy you. Not losing the title, that's just property and privilege. But giving up? Letting her win? That would kill something essential in you. Cassian was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled her into his lap, held her tight. How did I ever think this was just a business arrangement? Because you're stubborn and emotionally repressed? Fair. He buried his face in her neck. The contract ends in a week. I know. I don't want you to leave. I'm not going anywhere. Contract or not, I'm staying. Alara pulled back to look at him. Unless you want me to go? Never. Never. He kissed her, and Alara felt the desperation in it. The fear of loss, the weight of everything they were facing. The dowager cleared her throat. While this is touching, we have work to do. Alara, I've made those inquiries you requested. The results are interesting. Alara reluctantly extracted herself from Cassian's arms. What did you find? Lord Pemberton has been embezzling from his own estates for years. Small amounts, carefully hidden, but traceable if one knows where to look. The dowager's smile was sharp. He's been funding a separate household, for his mistress, and their 3 illegitimate children. The irony was almost too perfect. Cassian let out a shocked laugh. You're joking. I never joke about intelligence gathering. Lord Pemberton, who spent months publicly decrying your illegitimacy, has 3 bastard children of his own. The dowager laid out documents. I have bank records, property deeds, witness testimonies. Everything needed to prove it. Does Caroline know? Alara asked. I doubt it. She's been so focused on destroying you that she hasn't noticed her own house is built on the same foundation. Alara felt a savage satisfaction. We expose it. Publicly. Show everyone that the Pembertons are hypocrites. That would certainly end their moral authority on the subject of illegitimacy, Cassian said slowly. But Alara, those children you mentioned, they're innocent in all this. Exposing them could destroy their lives. He was right. Alara felt the weight of that. What if we just threaten to expose it? Use it as leverage to make Caroline back down? Blackmail, the dowager said. Direct and effective. And dangerous. If she calls our bluff, we either have to follow through and hurt innocent people, or we look weak. Cassian shook his head. There has to be another way. What other way? Alara demanded. She's not going to stop unless we force her to stop. You said yourself this fight is endless. Then maybe we change what we're fighting for. Cassian stood, paced to the window. Maybe instead of trying to destroy Caroline, we make it irrelevant whether she accepts us or not. How? By building something bigger than her vendetta. By proving so thoroughly that merit matters more than birth that her protests become meaningless. He turned back. The estates are thriving. The tenants support me. We have allies in the lords and the commons. What if we use that? What if we push for actual reform? The dowager's eyebrows rose. You want to change the inheritance laws? Why not? I'm the perfect test case. Show that someone without legitimate birth can manage estates better than half the titled incompetents in England. Use that as leverage for broader reform. That's insane, Alara said. That would take years, decades probably. Yes, but it would mean something. It would change things for everyone, not just us. Cassian's eyes were bright now, energized. Caroline wants to fight about whether I specifically deserve my position. Fine. We make the fight about whether anyone deserves position based solely on birth. That's a fight worth having. Alara looked at the dowager. Is this even possible? Theoretically. The reformist faction in Parliament has been pushing for changes to inheritance law for years. They lack a compelling case study. The dowager's expression was thoughtful. Cassian could be that case study. The illegitimate son who proved merit matters more than blood. It's a massive risk, Alara warned. It makes us even more visible, more vulnerable. We're already visible and vulnerable, Cassian countered. At least this way we're fighting for something meaningful. Alara felt something shift in her chest. This was why she loved him, because when cornered, instead of lashing out or giving up, he found a way to turn crisis into purpose. All right, she said. Let's do it. Let's change the whole damn system. The Dowager smiled. Well, this should be interesting. They spent the next 2 weeks building alliances. Cassian gave speeches in the Commons about merit-based advancement. The Dowager called in every favor she'd accumulated over decades. Alara coordinated with the tenant families, gathering testimonials about the improvements to their lives under Cassian's management. And slowly, impossibly, momentum built. The reformist MPs embraced Cassian as a symbol of their cause. Newspapers that had condemned him began publishing stories about estate improvements, happy tenants, innovative management. Common people saw him as one of them, someone who'd succeeded through work rather than inheritance. Caroline fought back hard. She published editorials, organized society boycotts, tried to pressure their allies into withdrawing support. But each attack made her look more desperate, more petty, more obsessed with tearing down rather than building up. The turning point came at the Rothmore Ball, 3 months after Cassian's announcement. It was the first major society event he and Alara had attended since the revelation. They arrived expecting hostility. Instead, they found a room divided. Half the attendees were Caroline's allies, the old guard, who believed bloodlines were sacred. They sneered and whispered, making their disdain obvious. But the other half, younger peers, progressive thinkers, people who'd benefited from the reformist agenda, they welcomed Cassian and Alara warmly. Your Grace. Lord Ashcroft, a young earl known for radical politics, approached with a smile. I've been hoping to speak with you about the reform bill. Your testimony in committee was remarkable. Thank you, Ashcroft, though I'm sure my mother did most of the heavy lifting. Don't sell yourself short. You articulated the case for merit-based succession better than anyone. Ashcroft glanced at Alara. And Miss Whitlock, your work organizing the tenant testimonials was brilliant. Those personal stories made the abstract political. Alara felt warmth spread through her chest. I just gave people a platform to share what they were already experiencing. Modesty doesn't suit you, Vivian Ashford appeared, resplendent in silver silk. You orchestrated a grassroots campaign that shifted public opinion. Own it. Across the ballroom, Alara saw Caroline watching them. Her expression was thunderous. She's losing, Vivian observed. You can see it in her face. All her attacks, all her efforts, and you're still standing, still gaining ground. It's not over yet, Cassian said quietly. No, but you're winning. Vivian raised her glass. To merit over birth, and to the two of you for having the courage to fight for it. They drank. And Alara felt for the first time like they might actually survive this. The music started, a waltz. Cassian held out his hand. Dance with me. I thought you hated these events. I do, but I love you more. His smile was crooked. And I want everyone here to see that we're not ashamed, not hiding. We're here, we're together, and we're not going anywhere. Alara took his hand. They moved onto the dance floor, and conversations paused. Everyone watching the bastard duke and the merchant's daughter, the couple who shouldn't exist but somehow did. Cassian pulled her close, closer than was strictly proper. I keep thinking about that first night, when my mother announced you'd be my fiancé, and I was furious about the whole arrangement. You were an ass, Alara agreed. I was. I thought you'd be some desperate girl I'd have to tolerate for 3 months. Instead, you turned my entire world upside down. Sorry about that. Don't be. Best thing that ever happened to me. He spun her, and Alara laughed despite everything, despite the stares and the whispers and the half of the room that hated them. Marry me. Alara stumbled. Cassian caught her easily, kept them moving. What? Marry me. For real this time. Not for 3 months, not for a contract. Forever. Cassian, we're in the middle of a ballroom. I know, terrible timing. I'm terrible at this. He was smiling, though, bright and genuine. But I don't want to wait anymore. I don't want this to be a pretend engagement that might fall apart when the contract ends. I want it to be real. I want you to be my wife, legitimately, legally, forever. Alara's throat was tight. People are staring. Let them stare. Let them see that I'm choosing you, not because of a deal or arrangement, because I love you and I can't imagine my life without you in it. His voice dropped. So what do you say, Alara Whitlock? Will you marry a bastard duke with the uncertain future and more enemies than allies? Yes. The word came out choked. Yes, you idiot. Of course, yes. Cassian kissed her right there on the dance floor. Improper, scandalous, and absolutely perfect. Half the room gasped. The other half applauded. And across the ballroom, Caroline Pemberton's face went pale with fury. The engagement, the real engagement, was announced the next day. Letters of congratulation poured in from surprising sources. Even some of Caroline's former allies defected, apparently deciding that backing a losing cause wasn't worth their social capital. The Dowager was triumphant. Caroline overplayed her hand. She made this about destroying you personally, rather than about principle. Now that you're clearly winning, people don't want to be associated with her vendetta. She still has the legal challenges, Cassian pointed out, which are going nowhere. The courts are slow, yes, but the judges aren't blind. They see public opinion shifting. They see the reform movement gaining strength. Ruling against you now would be politically dangerous. So we've won. Alara couldn't quite believe it. Not completely, but we've turned the tide. The Dowager's expression softened. You two did the impossible. You took a scandal that should have destroyed this family and turned it into a catalyst for real change. I'm proud of both of you. Coming from the Dowager, that was high praise. Alara felt tears sting her eyes. That night she wrote to Mira. Her sister had been managing the flower shop throughout all of this, and Alara missed her fiercely. Mira, I'm getting married. Really married. Not pretend. I know this whole situation has been insane, and I'm sorry I couldn't explain everything before. But Cassian is good and kind, and I love him. I hope you'll come to the wedding. I need my sister there. Father's physicians say he's improving. The medicines are working. He might actually recover, Mira. After everything, he might actually be okay. I keep thinking about Mother, about what she'd say about all this. Probably that I'm being reckless and foolish, but also maybe that love is worth fighting for, even when the odds are impossible. I miss you. I miss Thomas. I miss the shop and the simple life we had before all this chaos. But I wouldn't change it. Not if it means losing what I've found here. Come to the wedding, please. I need you to see that I'm happy, that this wasn't all for nothing. Love, Alara. The response came within days. Mira would come. So would Thomas. Their father sent a blessing through the physician, too weak to right himself but strong enough to understand his daughter was getting married. The wedding was planned for the spring, 6 months away. Enough time to prepare properly, to let the scandal die down further, to shore up their position. But Caroline wasn't finished yet. 2 weeks before the wedding, she played her final card, a lawsuit claiming Cassian had defrauded the estate through his illegitimate management. The legal argument was thin, but it forced another court appearance, more scrutiny, more stress. She's desperate, the Dowager said, reviewing the filing. This lawsuit has no merit. She knows it, but she wants to disrupt the wedding, create doubt, make one last grab at relevance. Will it work? Alara asked. Depends on the judge, and on how Cassian performs in court. Cassian, for his part, was calm, almost eerily calm. Let her try. I have documentation of every decision I've made for these estates, every improvement, every expense, every outcome. If she wants to put my management on trial, I welcome it. The hearing was held the week before the wedding. Alara sat in the gallery, hands clenched, as Caroline's lawyers laid out their case. They painted Cassian as an interloper who'd enriched himself at the estate's expense, who'd made reckless decisions, who'd abused a position he had no right to hold. Then Cassian took the stand. He was devastating. For 3 hours, he walked through his management decisions with precision and clarity. He had numbers, projections, testimonials. He explained how every change he'd made had improved yields, reduced costs, or benefited tenants. He answered every accusation with calm facts. By the end, even Caroline's lawyers looked uncomfortable. The judge ruled from the bench. Mr. Vale, I use that term deliberately, as your title remains contested. Your management of the Vale estates appears not just competent, but exemplary. This lawsuit is without merit. Case dismissed. The gallery erupted. Caroline's face went white, then red. She stood, looked like she might protest, then turned and fled the courtroom. Elara found Cassian in the hallway afterward. He looked drained but triumphant. Is it over? She asked. Is she finally finished? I think so. She's out of moves, out of allies, out of credibility. He pulled her close. We won, Elara. We actually won. We survived, she corrected. Winning and surviving aren't always the same thing. True, but I'll take it. He kissed her forehead. 1 week until you're stuck with me forever. Last chance to run. Not a chance in hell. The wedding took place on a brilliant May morning. The estate gardens were in full bloom. Elara had insisted on handling the flowers herself, one last connection to the work that had defined her before all this began. Mira cried through the entire ceremony. Thomas tried not to and failed. The dowager, surprisingly, also dabbed at her eyes during the vows. Cassian looked at Elara like she was the only person in the world. And when they were pronounced married, truly, legally, permanently married, his smile could have lit the entire estate. The reception was a curious mix, old aristocracy mingling uncomfortably with common folk, tenant families celebrating alongside titled lords, Vivian Ashford getting into a spirited debate with a reformist MP, Lord Bradshaw, dancing with Mira, making her blush. And nowhere to be seen, Caroline Pemberton. She hadn't been invited naturally, but Elara had half expected her to show up anyway, to make one final scene. She's done, the dowager said, appearing at Elara's elbow. I received word this morning. The Pembertons are leaving London, retiring to their country estate, indefinitely. Because of the lawsuit failing? Because of everything. The vendetta, the obsession, the constant defeats. They've become a laughingstock. Better to disappear than continue being humiliated. Elara should have felt triumphant. Instead, she felt oddly hollow. All that fighting, all that cruelty. And in the end, she just leaves. That's how it usually ends. Not with dramatic confrontations, but with quiet retreats. The dowager's expression was knowing, though I suspect Caroline will never forgive herself for losing to a merchant's daughter. I suspect you're right. They stood together watching the celebration unfold, watching two worlds, aristocracy and common folk, mixing in ways they never had before. You changed things, the dowager said quietly, not just for Cassian, not just for this family. You proved that an outsider could not just survive but thrive in a world designed to exclude them. That matters. I had help, a lot of help. True, but the courage to try in the first place? That was all you. The dowager turned to face her. I chose you because I thought you were desperate enough to be controlled. Instead, you controlled the entire situation. Turned a business arrangement into a love story. Turned a scandal into a reform movement. I underestimated you, Elara. It won't happen again. Coming from the dowager, that was the highest compliment possible. Cassian found her as the sun was setting, pulling her away from the crowd for a private moment in the conservatory. Their conservatory, where orchids bloomed in testament to small kindnesses and careful tending. How are you holding up? He asked. Tired? Happy? Still processing that we actually made it here. Elara leaned against him. Do you ever think about that first night, when your mother told you about the arrangement? All the time, I was so angry, so sure this was going to be the worst 3 months of my life. And was it? The best, the most terrifying, the most difficult, but the best. He tilted her chin up. You saved me, Elara. Not just from Caroline or the scandal. You saved me from myself, from a life of hiding and avoiding and pretending I didn't need anyone. We saved each other, she corrected. I was drowning before this, desperate and scared and running out of options. You gave me a chance when no one else would. My mother gave you a chance. I was furious about it. True, but you came around eventually. I did. Cassian's smile was soft. Best decision I ever made. They stood there as the party continued without them. Two people who shouldn't have fit together but somehow did. The bastard duke and the merchant's daughter, the impossible couple who'd defied every expectation. What happens now? Alara asked. Now we live. We manage the estates. We push for reform. We fight the legal battles still to come, and there will be more, make no mistake. But we do it together. Together, Alara agreed. Years later, when people told the story of the Duke of Vale and his unlikely Duchess, they focused on the scandal, the revelation of illegitimacy, the social warfare with Caroline Pemberton, the dramatic court battles. But Alara knew the real story was quieter. It was in the orchids that still bloomed in the conservatory, in the flower shop she'd reopened in the estate town, employing local girls the way she'd once been employed, in the school for tenant children that Cassian had funded, proving his commitment to merit-based advancement. It was in the reform laws that finally passed 5 years later, laws that changed inheritance rules across England, laws that made birth less important than capability, that opened doors for people like Alara to rise based on work rather than bloodline. It was in her father, who'd recovered enough to walk her down the aisle, and who now lived comfortably in a cottage on the estate grounds. In Mira, who'd married a local merchant and ran a thriving business. In Thomas, who'd gone to university on Cassian's sponsorship and was studying law. It was in the children, 2 so far, with a third on the way. Children who would grow up knowing that their father's illegitimacy didn't define his worth, that their mother's common birth didn't limit her strength. On Alara's 10th wedding anniversary, Cassian found her in the conservatory again. It had become their place, the spot they returned to when the world got too heavy. Penny for your thoughts? He asked. Just remembering. That first morning, delivering flowers to an estate I'd never be allowed inside. Being invisible. You were never invisible to me, not after that first argument in my study. You were terrible in that first meeting. I was terrified. My entire life was being upended by my mother's scheme and this stubborn florist who refused to be intimidated. Alara laughed. We were both terrible, both scared, and both too stubborn to give up. Cassian pulled her close. I'm glad we were stubborn. Me too. They stood there among the blooming orchids, survivors of a battle that had forged them into something stronger than either had been alone. The merchant's daughter who'd become a duchess, the bastard duke who'd changed a nation's laws. They hadn't just survived their world, they'd transformed it. And in doing so, they'd proven that sometimes the most impossible love stories are the ones worth fighting for.